Yeah, well, let's just jump into it, right?
Okie dokie.
All right. Pleasure to meet you, Chris. Thank you for getting
Thank
up
you, John.
bright and early on this Saturday morning. You're in the UK, right?
In the UK, yeah.
Where specifically, if you don't mind?
So I'm officially in the Midlands, so
Okay.
closer to the East Midlands than the middle of the Midlands. So just sort of outside of Leicester.
All right. Now, I've been to London. My wife and I went there for a honeymoon. So
Mhm.
that is my only really experience being there. Now,
That's
so
fair.
how close are you to London itself?
So if I were to hop on a train today, if lockdown wasn't happening, I could be in London in an hour and 20, depending on whatever the connection took. So I'm not far from London at all. I
Sure.
mean,
Is that,
often,
yeah.
go ahead.
No, I was going to ask actually, would that be the same train if you wanted to go to like Paris or whatnot?
Well, no, I would have to go from here to a connecting city, either
Hmm.
Leicester or Peterborough, and then I would go from there to London, and then at London I would change onto the Eurostar.
Oh, okay. Cool. Very cool. And are you in your hometown right now? Is that where you are? Or you grew up or?
Uh, I grew up in a town called Market Harborough, which is it's about half an hour from here.
Yeah.
So I grew up in Market Harborough, went to a city called Lincoln for university, and then lived in a different town just after university, and then I moved here. But really, England is so small, you're never really that far from home. Um,
Sure.
Being only half an hour away is quite nice. It means I can pop home and see my family.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
when the world's not on fire, I can do
no,
that.
of course, of course. How are you doing with all that anyways? You guys
Yeah,
surviving
well,
okay?
I mean, surviving okay. I mean, just before Christmas, my wife and I both happened to catch COVID.
Okay, I'm sorry
Um,
to hear that.
I mean,
Yeah.
it is what it is. Luckily, we both experienced it quite mildly.
Hmm.
Um, I think it hit me worse than it hit her, thankfully, which is the way I would prefer it to be.
For sure.
Um, yeah, not a fun thing, but at the same time, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, which to me says that we were quite lucky. She's a
Yeah.
teacher,
Oh,
and the
okay.
schools were still open at the time. And of course, when you have schools full of hundreds of kids, it's bound to spread like wildfire.
For sure.
So
What does
that's
she
exactly why.
teach?
She teaches drama.
Oh, does she? And what
Yeah.
the high school or?
Yeah, so it's the upper years. So she teaches from what we call year seven, so age sort of 12 and 13,
I
right
got you.
through to year 13, which
Right.
is, sort of 17, 18 years right before they go off to university.
So you don't have, I grew up in Canada, which
Mm,
is very similar to the United States actually, but we got a public school, middle school, high school, right? It's
yeah.
called something a little different. It's pretty much the exact
Yes.
same.
Yeah, we call it primary school,
Hmm.
and then depending on whereabouts you are, for me it was high school, then college, then university.
Okay.
But for some people, it's primary school, secondary school, middle school,
Okay.
university.
Same idea though.
So exactly the same
Same thing.
principle. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly
And
the same
you
principle.
said you go to, there's 13th grade?
Yeah, year 13 is like the last year you would do before you then go off to university.
Yeah, okay. Where in the States, they only have 4 years. Where I grew up, we would have 5 years, right? So
Oh, okay.
we'd have year 13 as well. But that was
Hmm.
only specifically if you're gonna, it doesn't exist anymore, but that was if you're going to go to college, you had to take what they would call, I grew up in Ontario, OACs, Ontario
Right.
Academic Credits, you know?
Oh,
So
okay. Yeah.
everyone pretty much went to grade 13, whether you're
Yeah.
competing your 12th grade or you're going off to college, but that's what it
Okay. So
was. Is that similar
for
as
us,
well or no?
12 and 13 are optional for us. So you can leave at 11 after you've done your 11th year. You can leave if you don't want to go to university and if you don't want to get what we call your A levels, which is like your next level up from GCSEs, which are like the basic must haves.
Mm,
Once you've got your
similar.
GCSEs, you can go off into the world and get a job or get an apprenticeship and train and do whatever you want to do. But if you want to
Okay.
go off and be more academic, you can do your A levels and then your university.
But you have to go to 12 and 13 if you want to go to college or university.
Oh yeah, you couldn't. I mean, there are some universities that might let you in, I suppose, for various reasons if you've got certain experience. But yeah, generally you have to have your A levels if you're going to go to university.
Okay. And what did you study when you went to college?
So I actually met my wife studying drama at
Oh wow.
university.
Oh, very
At
cool.
the time, I thought I wanted to be an actor, and then I
Yeah.
realized I actually quite like having a steady paycheck, and so decided I didn't want to do that.
Well,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, my university offered two different drama courses. Mine was drama in the community, hers was drama in education. And we met just through mutual friends. Obviously, we were both sort of doing the same kinds of shows and stuff, and that's where we met.
Okay. Did you do a lot of acting as well growing up, or?
Yeah. I mean, I think it was all hilariously born out of the fact that I love to dress up and wear costumes and, sort of play
Sure.
a little bit of make believe.
Sure.
Um, yeah, but from the age of about, I don't know, 11, I was doing sort of amateur dramatics.
Hmm.
My first show was what we in the UK call a pantomime. I don't know if you know what a pantomime is.
I
Uh,
do. Yeah. I
so
mean,
yeah,
that's,
that's
correct me if I'm wrong, but I think of a pantomime as, with the white gloves.
no,
Am I wrong?
that's just
Miming.
mime.
What's pantomiming then?
So pantomime
So
is
correct me.
it's okay. I mean, pantomime is such a distinctly like British tradition that it's really
Sure.
hard to explain to anyone else. It's where usually a theatre group will put on what they call a pantomime, where they take like a classic like fairy tale story like Cinderella,
Okay.
and they put it on as this over the top show where there will be, the fairy godmother, for instance, would be played by a man in drag. That's a
Okay.
traditional thing.
Okay.
uh and there's lots of music and there's audience participation where they're shouting at the actors, and it's a comedy and it's a musical and it's just really over the top.
Now,
um
how did you find it with the interaction from the audience?
I mean, that's always good fun. I mean,
Right.
I wanted to do the pantomime because as a kid growing up, I used to go to the one in the little village that I grew up in, and I
Okay.
loved it. Like, it was the highlight of my Christmas every year.
Okay.
um and so I then talked to the people that had done that production and went, look, I really want to get involved in this. It looks like fun. And then the next year I was in it, and I was terrible because I was 11 years old. I'd never acted in anything before, and I could barely remember my lines, and it was ridiculous. But I got through that, and then I got the sort of bug for getting on stage and making a fool of myself.
Did you experience stage fright at that time in your life? Was that a factor at all, or has that ever been a factor for you?
No, not really. I've been very, very lucky in that I've never experienced, what most people would call stage fright, where you just completely freeze up.
Hmm.
I've been in shows where people on stage with me have done that, and that makes it really difficult
Sure.
to try and recover from.
Okay.
But no, luckily I've never sort of experienced that like stop dead in your tracks stage fright.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, I
Yeah. Just where you get super self-conscious and you're just like, oh, you're just stuck in your head and you can't move forward, kind of thing.
no, luckily that's sort of never. I mean, I've been absolutely terrified,
Sure.
but just in sort of like an excited, nervous energy kind of way, not in a like, oh my God, I can't do this kind of way, which is very lucky.
Okay. Yeah, that
That's
is
how I
lucky, actually.
experienced it.
I
Yeah.
think that's a mindset that you're very fortunate to have,
I mean, I
honestly.
guess so. Yeah.
I would think so. I think that it's easily to get distracted and get stuck in your head doing something like that. And if that isn't a
Yeah,
factor for
sure.
you, that's a very much of a positive. I noticed that you're drinking a French press. Is how you like your coffee?
It's how I make my coffee at home, just because my wife doesn't tend to drink coffee. It's not really worth doing anything more substantial.
Hmm.
So yeah, I'll just drink French press. We call it cafetiere here.
You call it
Um,
what?
Cafetiere,
Okay. Hmm.
same kind of,
I
yeah,
got you.
French.
Now,
So yeah, I'll drink.
is it sacrilege for you to be drinking coffee and not tea? That's the first ignorant across the water question thrown at you.
It is not ignorant, John. I mean, a lot of people have asked me that. The thing is, I'm not a big tea drinker myself. I like maybe one cup of tea every like 2 or 3 months, and that's usually only if I'm feeling under the weather.
Mm.
Um, Generally speaking, I would drink coffee all day long.
It doesn't
No,
affect you.
it,
Like
it,
you have it at 10 o'clock at night, a cup of coffee, you're good to go.
I could have probably one cup of coffee at 10 o'clock and still go to bed. Um, I think I developed a really intense tolerance as a student, as I think a lot of people do.
Right. Well, how much
Like,
coffee do you drink when you're working
when
at
I'm
home?
working, I actually, so because the way my workspace is, it's quite small. I actually struggle to have like drinks on deck while I'm working on stuff. So
Okay.
I'm quite lucky in that I'm not sitting there chaining coffee all day.
Sure.
I'm trying to limit myself to like one pot of caffeinated coffee a day, and that's it. Switch to decaf,
Okay.
because, as I say, left to my own devices, I'll drink it like it's going out of fashion,
Sure.
which is not good for me. I need to be cutting back on it.
Right.
when I'm at my day job, which is actually managing a coffee shop,
Mhm.
again, I can do the same thing where, I could chain it if I wanted to, but
Sure.
usually I don't have enough time to do that, which again is quite good.
Are you guys busy right now? I mean, how's business?
Not at the minute. We had to switch to takeaway only, which is, the most sensible thing we could have done.
Of course, yeah.
Um, Obviously, got to keep everyone safe.
Hmm.
Not that I'm involved in any of the decision making. It's a chain coffee shop, so I just follow orders from on high.
Okay.
Um, uh, yeah, but for the time being, it's fairly quiet. I mean, we're a small town where I am anyway.
How big is your
Um,
town?
I,
Like
I wouldn't I wouldn't
10,000,
even know.
20,000?
Yeah, probably 10, I would say,
Okay.
maybe even less. It is a really tiny little town.
Okay.
Um, and so we don't get tons of traffic normally anyway. Um, so long shifts can be quite boring at the minute. I've been doing a lot of reading on shift. That's been quite nice.
Do you listen to podcasts at all?
Well, I find that harder because obviously I've got to have headphones for that usually. And then if
Yeah,
someone walks in, it becomes a whole thing of like,
for
whereas
sure.
if I'm reading a book, I can just chuck it on the side and
Right.
carry on, which is,
Right. Do you read a lot? Do you read a lot of books?
I go through phases. I used to read loads and loads and loads when I was younger. I used to read book after book after book after book.
Hmm.
Now I tend to go through like where I've just gone through a phase now where I've read like 6 books back to back, and now I've got nothing else I want to read right now. So I could
Mm.
probably go, a good couple of months before I pick up a book,
Okay.
and even then, that could be the only one I read.
Sure. I got you. I got you. Um,
Yeah,
I mean, I'm sorry that, with COVID, whatnot, I'm sorry you guys have contracted that. But I think that, it's, what's the situation over there with the vaccines? Are you guys getting those? I mean, how are
they're
they?
rolling them out. So the way it's working for us at the minute is obviously it's going to the elderly and the sort of high risk folks first, understandable.
Sure.
Um, and then it's, slowly but surely going down and down and down the list. I mean, my wife and I being only 28 will be some of the last people to get the vaccine, I would imagine.
Right.
We're young and healthy and we're not really what they call
Right.
at risk.
Well, you are in working though, which would be considered, at least here. I know it's the exact same thing here, right? Honestly, I
Mm,
mean, I think it's the exact same thing in the entire world for the
yeah.
most part. Um, but if you work in guest service industry, where you're interacting with guests, I believe there's an opportunity to get it earlier,
Oh,
right?
interesting.
Which makes sense.
Yeah,
I
for
mean,
sure.
honestly, it's like a first what is it, first line responder or
Yeah.
whatnot. But well, uh, is that your Ghostbusters jumpsuit in the back, right in behind you there?
Yeah, that's the one I finished just the other day. Yeah, I call it my Ghostbusters 2 jumpsuit, but really I'm making it more in the style of Ghostbusters the video game, which is really what inspired me to put together a Ghostbusters costume in the first place.
The
Because
the video game.
because I love the movies, and then
Hmm.
a little while ago they re-released the remastered video game on Nintendo Switch, which is the only console I own. So I
Okay,
played through that
is it good?
and loved it. Yeah, it's a if you're a big fan of the game, it's great. If you're
Hmm.
just playing it for a gaming experience, I would probably say it gets a little samey after a while because there's only so many times you can bust a ghost and it still be exciting.
Sure.
You know,
It's sorry.
gone.
It follows. It's how what I've read about it. I remember when it came out as well. It's sort of the third film in the series, right? Isn't that how
Yeah,
they
that
kind of
that's
sell it?
what.
It's got the original cast,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So that's what Dan Aykroyd always says about it, is that he treats that as the third movie that never happened because that's the only time all of the cast got back together. Obviously, before Harold Ramis sadly passed away.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, that was the only time they all got back together for anything Ghostbusters related. And it is good fun. It's a wholly original story. You play as a brand new character that they just call the Rookie. He doesn't have a name. He doesn't speak. Just so you can easily imagine that it's you.
Sure.
Uh,
And that's what the suit is based off.
that's sort of what I'm basing it off of. That when you play through the video game the first time and you complete it, you're then rewarded by unlocking the grey suit, which is traditionally from just that montage scene in Ghostbusters 2.
Hmm.
But there's a glitch with the suit, where because it's just a recolored Ghostbusters 1 flight suit, as far as the video game designers are concerned, the Ghostbusters 2 patch that you have on your sleeve is there, but the Ghostbusters 1 patch glitches through it, so you get this effect where the 2 patches are stacked on top of each other.
Okay.
And so I'm waiting for my pal Adam Watney to send me that glitch patch, which is what I'm going to have on my sleeve.
What's that going to look like? How are you going to do a glitch patch? Is it going to be like a reflective thing in the light, kind of, or?
So someone in the Ghostbusters community just designed that as a patch and made it available that you can just order it. And the only thing is they didn't ship to the UK, so I got my friend Adam to order it for me, and he's sending it on. But yeah, literally a Ghostbusters 2 patch with a Ghostbusters 1 slapped on top of it.
Okay.
And it's a really neat little look, which works for me because I'm not really a massive fan of the Ghostbusters 2 logo.
The one with the...
because, you know, in terms of the canon of the movie, it doesn't make much sense to me that they would have it on their jumpsuits.
Well, yeah. But yeah, no, I know what you're saying. Logically, it certainly wouldn't work.
Yeah, I mean, there's a cut scene that sort of explains it, but even then, it's like, it's very
How do they
shaky.
try to explain it?
So when... this is going to be really boring for anyone that doesn't like Ghostbusters, but when they did the advert in Ghostbusters 2, you know how in Ghostbusters 1 they did the "We're ready to believe you."
Sure.
In Ghostbusters 2 they did the same thing, but there's a cut bit from that ad where Dan Aykroyd, Ray Stantz, you know, says, you know, we're back with twice the proton busting power and twice the know-how, and that's sort of how they get around the ghost doing that on their jumpsuits.
That works. I'll give them a pass on that. You know, I mean, it's clever enough to.
Movie.
Oh, I guess it certainly didn't work, did it?
Right. I mean, I like that they tried.
Right? They gave it a little bit of effort. So you live in the UK. Have you ever been to what is it, L Street Studio, where they shot the original Star Wars trilogy?
No, I haven't actually.
Where's that located? Do you know?
I don't know off the top of my head. I have it in my head that I've been past it. It's out in the countryside somewhere, as far as I'm aware. Like not far from, you know, London. Nothing's that far from London.
Sure.
But yeah, I seem to recall that I've been past it because when they were doing Force Awakens, my wife and I drove past where they were going to be filming it, which I guess must have been L Street. This was years and years ago, long before I started making costumes. And I remember jokingly saying, "Oh, you know, we should go and see if we can get a couple of auditions."
Sure.
You know, we had a laugh and we never thought about it ever again. But yeah, so it's not far from me. I mean, I don't know how regularly they offer, you know, tours and allow people in.
I assume right now, obviously zero.
But not at the minute.
But they must offer some. Most studios, I mean, it's a money making thing, right? So they must offer some aspect of it.
And I would imagine that obviously after COVID, they'll probably be wanting to ramp that up because movies haven't been really happening.
Right.
But yeah, no, I've never been. I think, as I say, I've been past it.
That studio is famous, I believe, not only for Star Wars, but also James Bond, I believe, as well. Right? I'm sure it's famous for a lot of things, but James Bond stage, yeah. Yeah,
I think that's also at L Street Studios. But yeah, it's huge, the James Bond stage, because they had to build out the ceiling or something for one of the Bond films. It's massive. They now use it for a lot of like underwater stuff, as far as I'm aware. That they've built a huge water set. Yeah. There's just like a permanent installation there, which is just, you know, hundreds of thousands of gallons of water for filming all your underwater stuff. Like, you know, in I think it's Skyfall, is it, or Spectre, where Bond gets shot off the top of the train. Yeah. I know the one you're talking about. That opening of Daniel Craig sinking in the water, that was filmed there, as far as I'm aware.
Okay. Are you a fan of Bond?
I mean, I'm as much of a fan of Bond as most people are. Sure. You know, I've read a lot of the books. I do enjoy the books. Okay. As a kid, I loved the movies. Pierce Brosnan was sort of my James Bond growing up.
Yeah, he was great. GoldenEye is one of the best ones. Yeah.
GoldenEye is one of the best ones, and of course, I had the video game on N64. I was obsessed with.
Is that the game that was supposed to be great? The Bond game? Was it the GoldenEye one? There's one that I know that's supposed to be really good.
GoldenEye is an absolute classic, first-person shooter, like just the ultimate sort of James Bond experience. I mean, the graphics have not aged well, but
I wouldn't think so. I'm especially
it has a 90s charm to it.
How is the Ghostbusters graphics? You said they redid it?
Yeah, they remastered it. a few years ago, and then they sort of re-released it out on the Nintendo Switch. So it's had a polish up. It looks pretty good, all things considered. I mean, not that
Yeah.
I'm not really a big technical guy. I'm not really huge into video games. I used to be when I was younger. So I only have a Nintendo Switch. It's not like I've got a PlayStation 5 or anything, because I could
No.
never personally warrant spending that much money on something that I don't really have that much time to play.
Right.
But for me, it looks good enough. It's serviceable. It looks pretty smooth. Everything looks like what it's supposed to look like.
Well, that's how I feel about, I mean, technology is moving so fast, right? You can have 4K now and so on and so forth, but you can get away with I like 720p, like HD.
Yeah, for
You know,
sure.
like, so especially with a video game which is so immersive.
Yeah,
Certainly nice to have a beautiful picture, right? That's just like
yeah,
that's just the sugar of what they're selling you. You know, it's the
exactly.
story is
If the
what pulls
gameplay
you
is
in.
terrible,
You're
no
not
matter
gonna
how nice it looks, you're not going to have a
you're
good
not
time.
agreed. Yeah, totally. I mean, that goes for everything, right? That goes
Yeah,
for
for sure.
even for films, anything, no matter what it is. If they're not giving you something, then you're gonna tune out.
Exactly. Yeah, you're 100% right.
So Madame Tussauds The Wax Museum.
Yeah.
Have you been to that?
So they're going to take away my British card after saying I don't drink much tea, and also I've never been to Madame Tussauds.
Well, do you know why I asked though?
Because I'm guessing because of the Han Solo waxwork they have with Greedo. Is that
Well,
why you bring it up?
yeah, yes, that's obviously a part of it without question. We went there on our honeymoon, and I dragged my wife to that place because
Yeah.
it's the only place that has the Star Wars exhibit. So they have a whole Star Wars like exhibit that you kind of walk through. You know,
I've
they
seen
have.
some photos of it. It looks pretty good. I mean, some of those waxworks can be absolutely abysmal,
It
but
was a
some of
hard,
them are great.
it was a hard sell, and I don't necessarily. I enjoyed it. I don't necessarily know if my wife enjoyed it so much, but yeah, I mean that's they have that they. I don't know if they still have it. I assume they do, but they had a Star Wars exhibit there
I
where
would
they
be
have.
shocked if they removed that, because Star Wars is still going like gangbusters, isn't it?
Sure,
So
that makes yeah
yeah,
for
and
sure.
that's cross generational. Granddad can remember Star Wars, and little Billy, aged 5, loves Star Wars. So you've got a lot of like cross generational
Well,
appeal
it's
there.
specifically if I mostly original trilogy, obviously,
Yeah,
not obviously, and then some prequel stuff, but that's pretty much it. Unless they've updated it, I assume they'll probably add Mandalorian stuff in there. I would imagine.
yeah. No, I mean, pretty easy to do a waxwork of the Mandalorian.
Oh yeah, right.
Just get a mannequin in costume.
Right. That's pretty much true. So speaking of Star Wars, let me ask you a question. What are your top three films that are not directed or produced by Lucas, Spielberg, or Ivan Reitman?
Oh wow. Okay.
That's totally
Blade
unfair. I
Runner.
apologize.
Blade
Blade
Runner is
Runner.
one of them, which feels like a cop out because it's still Harrison Ford in the lead. Um, yeah. God, I'm really struggling to think of literally any other movie now.
That was a
Um,
totally unfair question. I
oh,
apologize.
Drive is a huge one for me. I love that movie.
Okay. Yeah.
Have you seen Drive?
I have Ryan Gosling.
Oh, so good. Like
Yeah.
the soundtrack is
Hmm.
just incredible,
Hmm.
and a great performance by Ryan Gosling, in that he's playing someone that essentially is like has no personality, and I think that's actually quite difficult to do.
Sure.
Um,
He's brilliant, Ryan Gosling.
and just a random one that I've just remembered that I've watched countless times. The Artist.
Oh, yes, I have saw that a while ago. That one's it's completely silent, right?
Yeah,
Is
the
that that?
silent movie. Yeah,
That film's brilliant.
I love that
I need
film.
to revisit that film without question. There's so many great films, man.
So the
Yeah, but
the
that film's
lead in
great.
that is a guy called Jean Dujardin,
Hmm.
who is a French actor,
Okay.
um, who was well known in France for doing like spoofy surfer movies, and then he also did a
Did you
few
say
films.
spoofy surfer movies?
Yeah, like sort of like literally like spoofing like California 60s
Sure,
style surfer movies. Yeah.
sure.
And then he also did a series of films. I may have only just been two, but it was called OSS 117, which is like a James Bond kind of thing,
Was it a
where he
comedy as
played.
well?
Yeah, it's a comedy as well. It's almost in the vein of Austin Powers, but better than Austin Powers and more stylish than Austin Powers, in that it's set in the 1960s, so it's very like early James Bond style.
Hmm.
you know, sort of spoofing the Sean Connery era of James Bond.
Okay.
It's hilarious. Like
Say
they're
that
obviously
name of the movie again. I apologize. What was the name of it?
OSS 117.
OSS 117. Okay.
Um, the first one I believe is called OSS 117 in Cairo, Nest of Spies.
Is there more than one?
Yeah, there's two as far as I'm aware.
Oh, okay. All right.
And they are hilarious. I would really highly recommend them. Obviously, I have to watch with subtitles because I don't speak French. Um, but his performance in that is brilliant. He's got a real eye for comedy.
Yeah.
And then yeah, off the back of those kinds of movies, he ended up getting cast in The Artist because he's got that classic old Hollywood look.
It's
Uh,
amazing how some actors like Eric Bana, he started out in comedy,
did
and
he?
then he did Chopper, and then he basically everyone knows him. I mean, pretty much everything you think of is like Munich or whatnot, and all drama.
Yeah,
But yeah, he started out in comedy as well.
that's really interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
No
stand up,
disrespect to Eric Banner, I can't imagine him,
being funny.
as like a broad comedy guy. He's
Well,
usually
sorry, stand up. I should say stand up. So I don't.
really.
Yeah, stand up. So I don't. That I mean that could be very dry, right? Stand up could be a
Well,
lot
I
of different
suppose so.
things. Did you do improv? Did you do a lot of improv? Do you like improv?
Back in the day, I used to love improv when I was like, I don't know, 16. So still what we would call college, year 12, 13 for us.
Okay.
My drama course involved a lot of improv, not necessarily comedy, but just improv as like an acting technique to sort of, get you feeling creative. But of course, being teenagers and all thinking we were hilarious, it always devolved into very broad improv comedy. So yeah, I mean, I enjoyed that. I mean, I wouldn't want to do it now. I think I'd probably absolutely shit myself if I had to get on stage and do some improv now. But
Sure.
at age 16, I thought it was hilarious and I had a great time, and I was always the first one to
Sure.
volunteer to go up and do it. Yeah, quite a lot of improv back in the day.
So let me throw that question back at you. What are your 3 favorite films of all time, though?
Really tough to say. I would have to say Empire Strikes Back,
Mm-hmm.
which in my opinion is the best Star Wars movie, hands
Mm-hmm.
down. Ghostbusters, unsurprisingly. And from a sheer perfection standpoint, I'd have to say Back to the Future, just
Mm.
because it's like a well-oiled machine. That movie, it just
Sure.
goes, if you'll
Yeah.
pardon the pun, goes like clockwork. It is just,
Yeah.
it works so seamlessly together.
It's brilliant. All
What
those
about you?
films.
What are your 3 favorites?
My 3 favorites are Empire,
Yeah.
in no particular order. Jaws and Raiders.
Mm. Oh yeah, Raiders. Yeah, that is also flawless.
Yeah, Jaws and sorry, Empire and Star Wars to me are very I'm juggling with those movies.
Yeah.
But I lean towards Empire there's a reason why I think everyone feels the exact same way. The best thing about Empire to me is
You go.
is that it's not a duplication of Star Wars. It's the only original film after Star Wars that
Yeah. It's just a
maintains the characters. It's like I've said this as well before, but I do compare it to Godfather 1 and Godfather 2 because they're bookends of each other, right? Like once you start getting into Return of the Jedi, they start duplicating costumes, right? There's look they start going back to. But when you're talking about Star Wars, and you may have more of an eye for this, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Star Wars to Empire, outside of like the Stormtroopers and Darth Vader, right, which are the same, obviously, right?
Yeah.
Outside of that, the costumes all change, and there's
100%.
there's multiple costumes too. They give you multiple looks too, right? There's the Hoth soldiers, there's the Luke Bespin, obviously the Han Bespin. I mean, it's just like, and it's so whoever. Do you know who did the costume directing on that? I don't. I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
I don't know off the top of my head, actually, which is criminal, really.
Well, because
I've replicated their work so often.
Yeah, but that to me isn't important, because I feel like it's when you try to that's an intellectual information, and I think what you're doing is more artistic. So that doesn't balance together. Like you can't I never think that they don't mesh to me. You don't do intellectual work. right? There's intellectual work to it, but it's,
Yeah, no, but
I think
it's
it's
not like I'm
artistic
sitting
work.
down and writing a thesis about it.
Exactly. That's, well, anyway, sorry. So I didn't mean to put words into your mouth
No,
or
no,
and
no,
whatnot, but
not
whoever
at all.
did do the costume work on that film,
Mm.
I mean, that is legendary.
Yeah,
You know, I mean, coming from two huge Star Wars fans, um,
100%.
you know, I'm saying it's coming from two Star Wars fans. Neither one of us know who did it.
But the thing is, we could pick out the work from a lineup.
Without
Even if you don't know
question.
the name of the person that did the design.
Without
Like
question.
you can tell.
Without question. Yeah.
And that's the thing,
Yeah.
is Star Wars costuming has got so many specific hallmarks of what is and what isn't Star Wars. And so to get that right
Mhm.
is really difficult. Which is
Now,
why I think
yep. Go ahead, please. Nope.
which is why I think Empire is as you say, probably the best one, because it it develops what already existed in 77 Star Wars,
Hmm.
and builds on it and makes it all feel like distinctly the same characters, distinctly the same universe,
Hmm.
but while also giving us new things. Whereas
All
then you go
new.
to Return of the Jedi,
Hmm.
and it's a lot of rehashing of the same kind of ideas.
Hmm.
Um, that was a different costume designer in Return of the Jedi, um, who initially had come up with some really crazy ideas.
Mm.
And then, like Harrison Ford specifically, saw what they wanted to put Han Solo in, and he went, "No, just give me something similar to what I've had before."
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is why he ended up wearing essentially his Empire Strikes Back costume, but with a black vest, like in A New Hope. Um, Obviously, that's massively simplified, but
Hmm.
yeah, apparently they wanted him in like a blue leather vest and all sorts of like crazy ideas.
Is that
Um,
true?
yeah, oh yeah. I mean, if you've got the Star Wars costumes book, I point because mine's over there because I use it as reference
I do.
constantly.
I don't read them. I just look at the pictures.
There's a whole chunk in there about the Return of the Jedi Han Solo design, and you can see some of the proposed sketches.
Oh,
Um,
I'll
you know,
revisit that.
it's worth a
Yeah.
little look. And yeah, apparently the costume designer says, yeah, Harrison took one look at it and went, yeah, no, I'm not going to wear that. You just give me something, give me something like what I've had before.
Oh, Harrison.
I mean, if you're
Right.
Harrison Ford, you can get away with it, can't you?
Right. Well, I don't know, but back in '83, maybe not. I don't know. But he did though.
I think even then he was known for being cantankerous at the best of times.
Yeah. I heard one story about him, that one person that was an actor that did
Mm.
that worked with him. And they didn't say anything bad. All they said was oh God, what was it? Uh Basically it was about taking other people's lines, never like saying something like you should never use someone else's lines or take someone's lines or
Mm.
speak over someone's lines or tell someone what. No, that's what it was. You should never tell another actor what to do unless you're
Mm.
Harrison Ford. He didn't have a good experience. He was like saying it like under his breath, like a thing like so I was like, oh, that's interesting. That's
I
interesting.
think I think there's a different I mean, speaking as someone that hasn't acted now in God knows how long, I think part of it is you can offer advice if someone comes to you and says, I really don't know what to do with this scene. You can go, here's how I would do it. But if someone is doing it their way, it is the worst form to go, why are you doing it like that?
Right. I don't even think he'd ask. I think he just told.
But I mean, again, if you're Harrison Ford, what are you going to do?
Yeah, I know. Harrison Ford's a legend, clearly, without
Yeah, like,
question.
exactly. He's been doing it for so long.
Right. So with Empire, now, how did you get into actually what was your first inspiration as far as designing something for yourself? Because um obviously, Chris, you make costumes, right?
That is
Better
what I
sense of the
do.
word. Yeah, and you do it at a level that is, I would say, like 11, right? I mean,
I
you
mean,
you've
that's,
you've you've perfected your craft. No, you have though. I mean,
I
you
mean,
you can be humble about it, but you've perfected your craft. The best thing that we
for a
have right now
Jedi.
going in this world, outside of for especially if you're into cosplay and so on and so forth, is Adam's in the United States and you are in the UK, and whoever needs anything within, because shipping can be expensive, right? So you
Shipping
can
can
go
be
any which
crazy.
direction you want to go. But I mean, it's like it's to me, it's you're not going to go wrong, right?
I
You're
mean,
you're
that's
really not going
very
to go
generous of
wrong.
you, John.
Yeah. Well, I've seen
That's
your
very
work.
kind.
I think that anyone that scrolls through your page, they're going to see your work and they're going to see the attention to detail that you have been working at for, I mean, how long have you been doing this for? How long? I know your Instagram page may be only a year or so old, but you've been doing
Yeah.
this longer than
My
that.
Red Cup Apparel Instagram page is only literally just over a year old at this point. Um, I've been sewing since 2018. So I first started, I mean, I've always been interested in the idea of cosplaying.
Hmm.
Never really, I always lacked the confidence to do it because I didn't know anyone that did it personally. I didn't, it felt almost like a bit of a taboo in that, as a grown up to want to have costumes of my own, it felt almost a little like people might look at me and go, well, why do you want that?
Hmm.
But slowly but surely, I sort of got involved in looking at stuff online, looking at what people were doing, looking at the sorts of makers that were out there.
Hmm.
And Adam was a huge influence on me when I first started. I remember seeing Adam's Etsy
Hmm.
in about 2018 and just being blown away that one person was capable of making these things. It had
Hmm.
never occurred to me before that a singular person can do that. As far as I was concerned, these things all happened by companies, like
Sure.
Magnolia Clothes. You send it out to, India or Pakistan and get it made mass market. Nice stuff, but made mass market.
Hmm.
That's how it was done. And so seeing that, Adam was doing it and making stuff for himself, it inspired me to go, well, everyone starts somewhere.
Hmm.
Maybe I could have a go at making something.
Hmm.
Um,
But the difference, though, is Chris, everyone thinks that. Everyone has those. I know it's true. I mean, no matter what it is, it's easy to say that. It's easy to say, well, I want to do this or I could do that or whatnot. It's a whole different ballgame to actually start doing it, right? And to put
well, yeah, I
yourself
suppose so.
and to put yourself out there and actually do it. But I asked Adam this question as well. But do you have are you have an ability to draw? Do you have? I've seen your drawings on Instagram, and so I actually can answer this. I think they're great. They have a very cartoonish look to them, right?
Yeah.
Right, like a very natural cartoonish look.
Yeah. So, I mean, any of the drawings I have done,
Hmm.
if I'm drawing characters, it's very rare these days that I actually pick up a pencil and draw. During the
Hmm.
first lockdown, I sort of got a little bit back into it.
Hmm.
Um, I'm not an artist. Growing up, I was comic book obsessed, like just
Okay.
absolutely obsessed.
Can I stop you
Um,
for 1 second?
Go ahead.
You did say you're not an artist. I would just wanted to correct you there.
I mean, I don't think I'm an artist, but uh,
Sure.
drawing for me. So while I loved school, I was never very good at stuff like maths. I loved English. I loved science. I loved what I would sort of call the more creative subjects, and I
Hmm.
would include science in that because I think science is a creative subject. Um, so whenever I had to do something where there was just a concrete yes or no, right and wrong, my attention would wander, and so I got in trouble constantly for doodling. I
Okay.
lived in my imagination, so I was drawing, spaceships and Spider-Man and all sorts of stuff.
Sure.
The amount of times my teachers would rip pages out of my books and make me copy them out again because I doodled something.
Hmm.
And so that's really where my love of drawing came from. It was an escape from the mundane in my life growing up, which is probably why when we first went into lockdown and life was very mundane again, that I sort of turned back to back to doodling stuff, because it's just a fun way of passing 20 minutes of just
Sure.
scribbling out a character.
Well, you're still putting pencil to paper with what you're doing, whether
Well,
you may not be drawing an actual character, but
that's very
you're
true.
still
I mean,
drawing. It still takes an artistic eye to do
yeah,
a diagram, or you know what I mean, like whatever you're drawing, it takes an eye to do that. You can
yeah, I mean,
be
I guess when I sketch out designs for things, it's obviously less, I would say, less challenging than if I was to, try and draw, an anatomically correct superhero pose. Because
okay.
obviously it's a totally different ballpark. I can draw out a jacket, and it doesn't matter to me if it's, not a technical drawing, because I don't tend to draw technical drawings. I just go, that's the feel of what I'm going for.
Sure.
And then most of it is stored in here, and I
Hmm.
work on it as I go.
Hmm.
Um, that said, there are some things that I've drawn and drawn and drawn and drawn and drawn just because I'm trying to get my ideas out onto paper.
Hmm.
I've been working on not to go back to Ghostbusters, but I've been working on a Ghostbusters inspired jacket design
Hmm.
for over a year now. And
Like an
I've
original
drawn
jacket.
an original jacket inspired by like the
Sure.
flight suits with patches and stuff, just because I think
Similar
like
to like the New Hope Fest that you did.
yeah,
Similar
yeah,
in that vein.
very
Yeah,
similar in that it's inspired by, but not a replication of anything.
dude, I think that stuff is brilliant, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I really think that's brilliant.
Yeah, the thing I like about doing original stuff is that the troubleshooting when you're making something original is entirely different to when you're making a replication of something. Because when you're troubleshooting when it's an original thing, your scope for what you can do to fix a mistake is infinite.
Sure.
You can make it whatever you want. When you make a mistake and you're replicating something, you've got, I can either leave it and hope no one notices, or I can fix it. Those are your options.
Right.
You have a very binary solution there.
Right.
And for me, the answer is always fix it, because if I notice it, even if someone else wouldn't notice it, it's going to bother me for the rest of my life.
I recently built a blaster of old parts that I had lying around. Like I'm sure you're the same way with collecting materials, collecting this, collecting that, not being happy with it, whatever. So I have a lot of parts that I've just like, it's a bin full of money thrown away pretty much that I'm not using. Right. So I was like, you know what, let me build a blaster with old parts that, and I'll try to get rid of some parts kind of thing. Right. Just kind of, and not mark it up at all. Like I was very inexpensive. Right. And someone wanted to buy it. Well, I couldn't sell it to them until I repainted everything.
Yeah.
I say it's exact same. It was the exact same price, but to me, I'm like that, and I was like, I can't, because some people, which you may agree with, and this is probably where your attention to detail lies, is this might be the only prop this person's going to have, right? Not to get too heady about it, but you want to make sure that what you're putting out there is actually to your own standards.
Of course, yeah. And
right.
At the end of the day, it's got your name on it.
Yeah.
Not literally, but they're going to be going around going, oh yeah, I got this from John Miller, or I got this from Red Cup Apparel or whatever, and you want it to reflect your best work.
Yeah. And it's even beyond that. Yes, you definitely want it to reflect your best work. Sorry, I don't mean to speak over you as well, but there's an aspect that there's probably like, you just want it. Yeah, I guess you want it to respect your best work
for them. And there's nothing, I mean, I've had great experiences from independent prop makers, and I've had, less than great experiences. And nothing beats that feeling of paying good money for something and it arriving and exceeding your expectations. There is no worse feeling than paying good money for something at arriving and you going, oh, that's underwhelming for what I paid for it.
Yes. And I feel like that's probably the most case for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I feel like that's got to be the most case for a lot of people.
You read about it on the RPF all the time, on the Facebook group, especially, where someone's been scammed or someone's received something and it's either damaged or it's not what it was advertised, etc., etc., etc. And my heart bleeds for those people that have been conned out of their hard-earned cash, because props and costumes are expensive, especially when you're buying from an independent maker, because someone like you or I or Adam or anyone, when they're a one-man operation, the margins are already pretty thin, and so if you keep slashing the prices, suddenly we're doing it at an expense.
So I mean, it's tough. I mean, it's a hobby for me, only because of everything you just said. There's no way it could transcend into anything beyond that. It's for me, it's pretty much impossible, I mean, it's not impossible, but it's
you'd have to be working a lot, wouldn't you, to
well, it takes a long time. For the hours that you put into it. Like how many so I don't want to get on myself. You used to obviously played a lot as a kid. And did you cosplay as well? Sorry.
What, as a child?
In general, like as an adult, did you ever go to any kind of Dragon Con or Star Wars?
So before I started sort of getting into the cosplay world, I'd never been to a convention. I'd seen a lot of stuff. I followed a lot of cosplayers because I had the utmost respect for what they were doing. Usually it was Doctor Who cosplayers, because Doctor Who was one of the other great loves of my life. and I loved the clothes of Doctor Who. I loved like the costume design. I loved everything about the work done. There's a guy called Ray Holman who is just,
Who is
in my
that?
opinion, he's designed a lot of Doctor Who costumes, but he designed the original Matt Smith Doctor Who costume. So the 11th Doctor with the bow tie and the tweed jacket.
Okay.
He designed that look, and for me, that is one of the all-time great costume designs for a character, because it is so right for that version of the character that it's just flawless. And I've had the extreme pleasure of talking to Ray a couple of times via Twitter,
Okay.
back when I had Twitter,
Hmm.
and he's just such a lovely guy. But I followed a lot of Doctor Who cosplayers, who I still follow to this day, and I've now been lucky enough to sort of become friends with through my own work.
Sure.
And I always respected the people that had the confidence to go out there and do it, but then also had the sort of creative eye to go, right, where's that come from? Where's this come from? And put it together. So I'd never been. And then in 2018, Solo was sort of ramping up to come out. And I'd always sort of worn things that were inspired by costumes I liked. You know, if I liked a look in a film, I would go, oh, well, I could get such and such, and I could get that. And that would be sort of like an everyday version of a costume.
Hmm.
And then Solo was sort of, they were doing the marketing for Solo coming out. And I was really excited about it because Han Solo had always been one of my favorite characters.
Right.
And then when the first pictures of Alden were released, I can't remember what it was. It was like Entertainment Weekly or something. That first picture of him with Chewie wearing the suede jacket. No, it's just like a photo shoot one. It's like them on a blue background, as far as I'm aware. And Alden is like leaning up against Chewie,
Okay.
like holding onto his blaster rig. And he's got obviously the full Solo costume on with the the grey shirt and the suede jacket. I remember seeing that jacket and being like, wow, that is a cool jacket.
Yeah.
I was like, I want that jacket. I'm going to need to get that jacket. And then Magnolia went, we're going to make that jacket. And so I pre-ordered it. And that's sort of what inspired me from that point to go, you know what, I am going to put together a costume. I had one friend that was also interested in cosplay. He had never done much, my friend Dave. And so we went, okay, well, let's put some stuff together and we'll go to the next convention. And so in October of 2018, we went to a really great con local to me. It's called Feel the Force Day.
Okay.
And it's an all-inclusive convention, which is about sort of being accessible to those that may have learning difficulties or physical disabilities or whatever. They make it so that it's comfortable and it's accessible for everyone. And that was a great experience. So I sort of debuted my solo Han Solo, and he went as Mal Reynolds from Firefly. And we were basically just two space cowboys all day, and it was great.
What cost? So you were Han Solo from a Star Wars story?
Yeah. So that was the first sort of costume I debuted at a convention. But at the same time,
it was a Magnolia. Sorry, but just walk me through what you're wearing. A Magnolia jacket, I assume.
So I was wearing a Magnolia Solo jacket that I still have to this day. Really great suede jacket. I cannot fault the quality of it, especially for the price, because obviously it's all outsourced.
Sure.
I've made the shirt, which I done in a grey. I was wearing my first shirt, which was, I'd initially bought just a grey Oxford cloth, and a black Oxford cloth to do the bib, because obviously it's a two-tone shirt. But then when it arrived, the fabric arrived, the grey was way too light. So I ended up re-dyeing it. I'd made the shirt, I liked the shirt, I was really proud of it. And then I went, oh, hang on, it's about 6 shades lighter than it should be. So I re-dyed it. And of course, a lot of those early photos, as with most screen grabs and studio photos, it was hard to tell the exact color. Some people were going, oh, well, it's clearly a navy blue, it's clearly a dark green. Really, it is just a charcoal gray. At least that's what my research shows. It's a charcoal gray, but it's photographed strangely. I dyed it with a mixture of like a little bit of forest green and then a lot of charcoal gray, so it had like a greenish tinge to it.
Does your wife hate you, by the way? Because when she washes clothes and she pulls stuff out of there, I'm like, Chris, what the hell happened, dude? Like, no, all my shit is charcoal gray.
I'm usually pretty meticulous about cleaning out the washer. Although, to be fair, I think when I dyed that shirt, I actually did it by hand dye in like a bucket.
Oh, wow. At that point in life, you were being respectful.
I was being very respectful. Now, just anything goes.
Just squeezing the dye in there.
And then the trousers were just they were just a pair of navy blue chinos that I bought. And I bought a set of the embroidered blood stripes you can get online. And I went to a local seamstress because I wasn't confident enough at the time to know how to attach those. And I got her to stitch them up the sides. And then because obviously the blood stripes in Solo are much darker than in A New Hope, I used a load of watered down acrylic black paint to darken those.
Okay.
You know, it was perfectly respectable. I'd made my own gun rig.
Do you anything that you did on that costume, do you hold or duplicate to this day? Or do you look back at that and go, that was awesome, but I'm not doing any of that stuff anymore. I figured this out to a different degree.
Literally everything has changed. The way, God bless me from 3 years ago, but the way I made some stuff, I look back at it now and I go, I don't know what I was thinking doing that way.
Well, I would imagine you sounds to me like you kind of carved your own path with this, right? So there isn't you didn't, I mean, it was by pure inspiration that you actually wanted to do it and you took it upon yourself to do it. And then you just kind of followed your own breadcrumbs along the way to do it, so to speak, right? So you look by literally trial and error. You know,
trial and error should be the tagline to my autobiography. Literally,
I think that's
every costume I have ever made. I have probably made 2 or 3 times now.
Yeah, well, bless you, man, because that's you're heading in a direction that's led you to where you are right now with what's over your shoulder.
I think the thing to bear in mind to anyone listening that wants to get started on stuff, not that I want to start waxing lyrical and offering people advice.
I was going to ask you that. I was going to ask you that question. So please.
Should someone want to do what I have done, or what lots of other people have done, because there are lots of great costume makers out there that are entirely self-taught, as I am. My attitude is just go for it. You know, there are lots of good resources. There are even more great resources out there now than when I started, even a few years later. You know, there are lots of great patterns. Adam's doing a whole range of patterns that would have made my life so much easier 3 years ago. I would say just go for it. Like when I first started sewing stuff, I borrowed my wife's old sewing machine. So she had quite a nice sewing machine, still has quite a sewing machine. She sews a little bit herself. Years before that, she had a little, literally, it was this big, like baby blue plastic sewing machine that I actually bought for her because she said she wanted a little sewing machine. So I bought it for her. It cost me £50. And I used that machine until it stopped working. And ultimately, you don't need an expensive machine to be able to make stuff. Like the first few commissions I ever made were made on that machine. You know, just a tiny plastic, like did 2 stitches, it did zigzag and straight. That was it. And you know,
one of the I mean, yeah, you can make your life a lot more you can make things easier for yourself the more knowledge you gain along the way. But what you're saying is basically you can start with a needle and thread if you have to.
Of course you can. You can start with, you know, you can start by buying, you know, a stock piece of clothing and altering it and altering it and altering it until it becomes what you want it to be. Like
I was going to say, go ahead.
You go, John, you go.
No, I was just going to ask, I was going to say, like one of my first images of you specifically is the Han Solo, A Star Wars Story. It's one of his first costumes where he has the leather vest.
Oh, Corellia, yeah.
Right. And that's one of my, it was a very distinct, how long was that along your trajectory as far as building things for yourself?
Well, it depends. I've done 2 versions of that costume. The first version I ever did was, again, it was late 2018 or maybe early 2019, maybe 2019, because I remember it being the summer. But it was, I bought like a lady's leather jacket on eBay, painted it white, detailed it as best I could, glued on a load of crap that I had found, and went, good enough.
Right.
And it was janky as all hell. Like, because it wasn't accurate because I was just working with what I had. you know, it was a lot of leather glue putting that together, because I didn't have a machine that was strong enough to sew through leather. So it was a lot of leather glue making that.
Okay.
And then a while ago, I went, well, I'd really like to have a decent one.
Hmm.
So I patterned it myself, which is how I start most projects. Is I sort of did a load of research, did a couple of sketches, went, right, now I know the bones of this thing.
Hmm.
I can put a pattern together and try it. So I put a pattern together, made a little mock-up, which I don't always do. I should, but I don't always. Saw that the pattern was going to work and went, okay, great. Now what am I going to make it out of? Because I still didn't have a machine that would have sewn through proper leather.
Sure.
I mean, the machine I was using at the time even struggled with fake leather.
Hmm.
So what I decided to do was get some black canvas and paint that to give it the exact same look, because I was like, it's a shame to spend a lot of money on nice leather and then slap a load of white paint on it.
Right.
For those that don't know, that Corellia vest is a
Hmm.
black vest that's then painted white.
Is that why you did it? Did you go that route because you knew that, or was that what was available to you when you first started?
I knew that's what it was. Looking at reference, you can see that it's clearly, because part of the joy of that costume is it's so beaten up. You can see the paint is cracking and flaking, and you can see
Okay.
the blood underneath it. So
Okay.
luckily that made it quite easy to do that.
Hmm.
So yeah, when I made the new one for myself, the sort of more accurate one, I used canvas because I was like, that'll be an easier way of doing it. I mean,
Sure.
hilariously, once you painted a load of white acrylic paint onto some canvas, it then becomes difficult to sew anyway, but the machine managed it. Um, um, yeah, and then I sort of went from there. And weirdly, some of the stuff that I'd done for my first cheap version, I kept. Like I kept the belt that I had made, which was just a bare bones belt that I'd sort of altered, and I put the design on the belt buckle.
Hmm.
And then I went through and added a load of stuff to it to make it more accurate. And then the shirt I kept, which was just a found waffle knit shirt that you
Hmm.
then cut the neck out of, cut a load of holes into, and then splatter with some paint as well.
Sure.
And then the trousers were just a modified pair of jeans, because hilariously, those are the only Han Solo trousers that have got pockets.
Mm.
He's
Do you,
got literally a pair of frog mouth pockets like a pair of jeans, and one back pocket like a pair of jeans. So I
Now,
just removed one back.
is that an actual pair of pants that they used, or was that actually
I
customly
would
built?
I would imagine they were custom even then.
Right.
Um,
That's weird that they would add pockets to it, though.
yeah, it feels almost like, I don't know why they put pockets on it. But yeah, they do look custom. There's a couple of details that a pair of jeans have that they don't. But for the broad sense, they're a
Mhm.
pair of jeans with some ironed on blood stripes that are then absolutely caked in paint and weathering.
Mm.
Um, that's a fun costume to do, because it's just like the filthiest costume you can wear, really.
Your weathering is great on that. How do you do your
Um,
weathering? Is it paint apps or is it
it's,
just
it's it's mainly paint. Yeah, I mean, I'm no expert when it comes to weathering stuff. I'm not really a prop maker. I
Mhm.
mean, I'm mainly because I'm impatient. I was saying to someone recently, the amount of times, I think I just posted it on my story actually, the amount of times I've put a fingerprint in a paint application on a prop because I'm impatient, and then you have to strip it back and then paint
start
over it.
again?
Or me being lazy, I would normally just build up a few layers of paint over it so you couldn't see it anymore, because I'm that kind of impatient. Um, so for me, when I was doing the solo a Star Wars story, weathering for the Corellia costume, that
Mhm.
is just layer after layer after layer after layer of different colors of paint. It's whites, it's browns, it's blacks, it's umber, it's all sorts of stuff just sort of stippled on, layer after layer after layer.
Paintbrush? What are you using to apply it?
Paintbrush usually.
Yeah.
Paintbrush usually. For that's paintbrush. I mean, I'm a big fan of a rattle can spray paint for when I'm doing prop work. Like that was one I finished recently, which is a lifeguard prop,
Mhm.
3D printed. Again, it's not perfect, but it's good enough for me.
I use
Um,
rattle can for everything.
I mean, and the fact that you achieve the stuff you achieve with rattle can blows my mind. I was talking to my pal Jack, who is probably your
Okay.
number one fan, Jack Buckland. He's not on Instagram anymore, but he always sings your praises. And yeah, he was also saying the fact that you do what you do with rattle can is just like, it's
Yeah.
unbelievable.
You just, well, That's the only way I know how to do it.
I mean,
Just
and
I
it's
just
also experience and patience, which is something I do not have.
Yeah. Well, the biggest benefit for me personally is the weather. That's it.
Yeah, for sure.
California, if the weather's, I mean, like I said, I grew up in Canada, and
Mm.
I still feel like even though everyone, there's like 40 million people in California, and it's the weather.
Mm.
I mean, I lived in Vancouver for a little while, which I think has very similar weather to the UK. I know a buddy of
Yeah.
mine, when we talked to him, he's from Ireland, and it
Hmm.
sounds to me it's pretty much in Ireland, anyways. It's like an overcast 10 months of the year, right? You get a
Yeah.
very, very little snow, and it's wet. May not be pouring rain, but it's kind of always wet, you know?
Yeah, a little bit damp. Yeah.
Well, California is just like that, except it's not damp, it's not wet, and it's about 70 degrees every day.
Perfect. Yeah. That
Right?
that's good painting weather. Yeah.
That's what I mean. So I just look for the sun. If it's 65 and above, I usually have props sitting on my car or my wife's car out front, like just kind of painting and dusting them, and putting them out there. But
Yeah.
so let me ask you. So So from there, when you decided to move in, I mean, before you even start even offering up to someone else to
Mm.
purchase, right? And I would
Yeah.
imagine that starts with someone seeking you out, right? To a certain degree, right? People, you start receiving
Yeah.
positive feedback, and there's little nuggets that are dropped and being like, oh, you selling this, or you doing this or that? And you're
Yeah.
like,
So
okay, well, sorry.
back in the day, I had a different Instagram account called Red Cup Cosplay. That was just literally me sort of sharing my journey, and it didn't get crazy popular, but it got to the point where towards the end of its life, I had nearly 2,000 followers, and it was getting really
Chris,
gone.
is that the one that I was following I think I may have been following that account
Yeah,
then.
I think you were. I think
Yeah.
I think yeah, we were
Or
following
I
each other on
still
it.
am to this day, but do you still
Well,
use
it's
that account?
you're not, because it doesn't exist anymore.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
the point of me saying this is that it got to a point where towards the end of its life it had about 2,000 followers, which was stressing me out in that I was always on my phone, like just
Mm.
constantly on my phone dealing with Instagram. And one morning I woke up and I had 30 new messages
Oh,
on
wow.
that account, and it got to the point where I was finding it like it was causing me anxiety, and I found that I was posting stuff just to keep people
Now,
liking it.
messages specifically for what? Like, what were they saying? Like private messages complimenting, or reaching out to see if you could do something for them?
Complimenting usually, which, and don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to play the world's smallest violin, that people were reaching out and being nice to me. It was a lovely thing. It got to the point where I was finding it so like it was distracting me from my real life, and so I went, you know what, I need to get rid of this, because I was doing cosplay for the wrong reasons at that point. I was doing it to keep people engaged with my content
Mm,
rather than because I was enjoying it.
hmm
And it was around that kind of time, towards the end of that account's life, when I deleted it. It was around that kind of time that I first sort of really started taking commissions.
Okay.
Um, Again,
Did you find that stressful?
less so, usually because a commission is a fairly simple transaction, or it should be,
Hmm.
in
Should
all
be.
theory. Sometimes it isn't, but for the most part, it is very simple in that someone sees something I'm making, and even before I had an Etsy, even before I was advertising commissions, people would go,
Hmm.
can I buy this off you?
Hmm.
And to begin with, I'd go, no, I'm not doing commissions. I'm not interested in making stuff for other people.
Hmm.
And it got to the point where I was being asked sort of semi-regularly, and my friend Jack, who had been saying basically from day one of me sewing stuff, like, oh, you should consider taking commissions.
Hmm.
It was around that point that I started going, yeah, maybe I would enjoy that, because I found that I loved sewing stuff so much, but I was
Hmm.
running out of stuff to make for myself.
Sure.
And I was also going, it'd be great to have a little bit of extra cash just so I can support my own costume habit
Hmm.
and afford the stuff I want to buy.
Hmm.
Um, so the first ever commission I had done was just a sample piece I made for Jack, which was a Solo a Star Wars Story shirt. I was going to remake myself one of
Hmm.
those, and he said he wanted one. I went, well, I'll tell you what, I'll do it for cost,
Hmm.
because there's no guarantee it's going to turn out okay.
Right.
But I'll do it at cost price. You pay for the fabric, I'll
Hmm.
make it,
Hmm.
and if you like it, keep it, give me some nice feedback on it, let me know what you think, and then we'll call it quits. And so that's exactly what happened. He got it and he really liked it.
Now,
And
what?
still
Sorry, what did you make him specifically? Which shirt?
the gray shirt from Solo: A Star Wars Story.
Okay. Okay.
With an accurate colored fabric that time. And he got it and really liked it, which was very kind of him, considering it was the first one I'd ever made for anyone else. And yeah, it just sort of went from there. I sort of posted on the Instagram I still had at the time, you know, I'm looking at doing commissions, etc., etc. I got a good response from that. And you know, it just sort of went from there. And then late 2019, like the very end of 2019, I sort of set up my Etsy tentatively with a couple of products on there. And it's been, you know, just building ever since.
Now, what was the first what costume have you made the most within any universe, really? I assume it's Star Wars specifically, but
yeah, it is 100% Star Wars. In terms of stuff I have made for other people, Bespin gear seems to be my bread and butter. Jackets and shirts, Empire Strikes Back jackets and shirts for me.
So Solo specifically, obviously. Do you do Luke's Bespin? Have you ventured down that
I've
path?
never done a set of Bespin fatigues. I've had a couple of people ask about them, and I've gone, yeah, it's totally doable. Let me know when. But I've yet to do one of those. But yeah, Han Solo jacket, shirt, Bespin is that is absolutely my bread and butter, and it's the thing I've just ended up making the most. It was probably the first for my own personal stuff. The Bespin gear I made myself was the first stuff I had made where I could genuinely see like a one-to-one comparison between what I was seeing on screen and what I had in hand. And that's because I spent hours and hours doing research and thinking about it, and I made a mock-up of everything, and I worked really, really hard.
Now, where did you do your research? Where specifically did you pull from?
So the main thing, I said this on the other stream I did the other day, the main thing for me is prop store auctions. If you're lucky enough that the thing you want to replicate has been sold by the prop store, chances are they've got some great high-res photos of it. And when they sold Harrison Ford's Bespin jacket, they took some just gorgeous reference of it. You can see the fabric weave, you can see the color, you can see the stitching, you can see where the stitching isn't straight.
Now, which Bespin jacket is that? Which is it, the Bespin one? Because I from my understanding, there is a couple of them, right?
There's two different versions. We refer to it as the Bespin jacket just because that's easier than saying Empire Strikes Back every single time.
Sure.
But there's two key versions of that jacket. There's the Hoth version, and there's the Bespin version. Now the main difference between the two is that the Hoth version has a tiny, what we refer to in the industry, what we refer to as a collar notch, which is where the front seam of your jacket on the Bespin one smoothly transitions right into the collar, so it's like a smooth unbroken line. There's a seam, but it's straight. And then the Hoth version, there's a little notch where the collar is a little bit shorter than the opening of the jacket. So there's like a little step.
I got you.
And those are really the main differences. The prop store one, I believe, is the Bespin from what I recall, and it's a smooth transition. But I've made both versions.
Right. Now, I would assume it's the Bespin one that people angle towards.
Generally speaking, a lot of people don't even know there's a difference. A lot of people don't know that there was more than one.
I understand.
And that's fine. I mean, if someone doesn't specify what they want, I will give Bespin. Usually I can tell if there's someone like me that has that attention to detail but hasn't specified. I might reach out and check.
Do you ever check? Do you ever?
Often I'll come back to a client and go, look, here are two options. Which do you prefer?
And is that opening a can of worms? Sometimes you're like, I wish I didn't mention that, because then you have to kind of explain it all. And
sometimes you chase. I have no idea what you're talking about.
You chase your tail. Fun. Yeah, you chase your tail a little bit, right?
And then I have to send out a load of reference and go, yeah, look, here's the two. And they go, often the result is whatever you think is best.
Right.
And then I sort of, without wanting to sound really, airy fairy about it, I will then let the jacket sort of choose for me. In that it's about striking a balance between the client's measurements, the length of the collar, how the shoulders, it's all about creating a little bit of visual interest around it without being distracting.
Now, how difficult is it for you to make a custom jacket, obviously, when someone isn't there for you to take their measurements? I mean, how specific, obviously, you're asking someone that could be on the other side of the world
Yeah.
to translate their measurements over to you.
Mm.
And they more than likely don't even know how to take their own measurement, right? So
Often that is the case. Yeah, it can be really tricky. Because the way I work is on every listing I have, I've got a little sketch of the item with a few sort of arrowed lines labeled with letters, and I go, those are the measurements I need. Take your measurements from something you already own that fits you similarly to how you would like this thing to fit you, and I will make it to those measurements.
Smart.
Yeah, it should be foolproof. Often that's
theoretically
not the case because sometimes people don't read the listing properly and they give me their actual body measurements, and I have to double check, and I go, hang on, these measurements look small. I go, what did you take it off? And they go, oh, I took the measurements off my body. And I go, well, can you take it off a jacket you already own? And that's problem solved. Sometimes people make the mistake of they've just made an error, they've made a typo, and I have to double check. Luckily, so long as the vast majority of their measurements are good enough, if there is a glaring error, you can spot it immediately and go, well, hang on. I was making a shirt for a guy recently who's quite tall and, a standard broad chest. And, his chest was something like a 38, 40-inch chest around. But then he said that his back shoulder measurement, so across the back of his shoulders, was only 13 inches. 13? 13, yeah, 1-3. And I was like, well, that simply cannot be right. So I then had to get back to him and go, I think you've made a mistake here. Can you confirm? And he double checked and went, oh, yeah. You're right, I made a typo.
So no, I'm shaped like a pear.
Oh yeah, exactly. Top down view, it'd be like that.
Now, with your labels that you use, your red cup apparel, is that your design? Is that your drawing?
So no, that is not my drawing. It is loosely based on a logo I very quickly chopped together, which my old labels had. I had an old bright red label with just a simple line art cup on it and no text. There was text on the underside, but there was no text on the front. And then I have a friend who I met just because she was always supporting my costuming. Her name is Nia. She is a student studying animation at university at the minute, and she's a great artist. And so she redesigned my logo for me at my request.
So that's different than, I feel like it's very similar now.
It's incredibly similar. It's hand drawn, and she's just sort of done it in a nicer, sketchier way. It just looks more deliberate.
I love it. I think it looks great.
Thank you. I mean, she did a great job. I go to Nia for all of my artwork. If ever I need anything, I go to her. She does great work. She's foul fiend on
Now,
Instagram.
did you give her any kind of direction with that?
I sent her a photo of the logo I've been using, and went, look, I want something like this. I initially went to her because I wanted some stickers, because I always throw in a couple of stickers in packages. And I went, look, I'd like a couple of stickers designing. I'll pay you for it. Obviously, you just come up with a couple of bits and I'll have a look. And she did, and that was one of them. I went, well, I'll tell you what, I like that so much, I'm going to use that as my new logo, which is just a slightly more streamlined version of the one I was using. And she was like, yeah, well, you've paid for the artwork, you use it however you want, and every time I need stickers, I go to her and I get her to make me a load more stickers.
That's brilliant. Yeah, it looks great. I love it. I
totally
she did
love it. Job. She's actually working on something for me at the minute, which I'm not going to reveal just yet, but I'm looking at doing some more t-shirts, because every now and then I do like a little t-shirt run.
Yeah, I saw that you did a lot of that for charity as well, which is great.
Yeah, so I don't make any money off merchandise because it feels really lame to me personally to charge people to wear my logo.
Well, you're gonna have to get over that, though. Not that you're gonna have to get over that too, sir. I understand what you're saying. It's a very humble approach, and it's not about making money. It's about I mean, it's great that you give it to charity as well, but
yeah, I would rather the money just go to charity rather than
But there's nothing wrong with doing that as well. That's all I'm trying to say.
Well, I suppose so. I suppose so. But yeah, so usually I choose a cause and I go, look, the first one I did was for I think the first one I did was for COVID relief in the UK.
Mhm.
that just went to like the frontline NHS responders. And the next one I did was for Black Lives Matter. I don't know what this next one's going to be, but yeah, she's designing me
Is
some
it,
artwork to go on a t-shirt.
and will that be for charity as well?
That'll be for charity as well. Yeah, because
Excellent.
the company that I get these t-shirts done through,
Mhm.
they basically they go, you select how much you want to charge per t-shirt, we print it and take our cost amount out of it, and we
Sure.
PayPal the rest of the money. So they PayPal me the money and I just send it straight on to charity.
Right.
um so yeah, I just think it's a nice way of doing it, and it just means that I feel like I'm, making a small difference. And huge thanks to everyone that's ever bought any of my
Well,
merchandise.
yeah, I mean, honestly, you don't even have to do that. So the simple fact that you are doing it is making a difference, regardless of how you look at it. I mean, it's as simple as
Well, I
that.
suppose so.
So it's yeah, no, that's it's definitely a positive. Now, I read that I read somewhere you said you're waiting for fabric to dry. When you build something, do you wash it first?
So, yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know. Honestly, I've never built anything, so
Often,
I don't even know.
so often, if it's outerwear, if it's like a jacket or a vest, I don't tend to wash the fabric because it's going to be very rare you're going to wash that. If it's
Right.
going to be a shirt or a pair of trousers, then yeah, I wash it, because a lot of brand new fabrics will have a little bit of shrink left in them. And
Mhm.
the last thing I want is to make someone a really lovely shirt and then get it and go, great, I'll just stick that in the wash, and then it comes
Right.
out shrunk.
Okay.
So yeah, usually it's very rare these days that fabrics shrink that much, but it's best just to remove any variables if you can. So yeah, so like shirting fabric, trousers fabric, that always gets pre-washed.
Mhm. And I also read you what is an overlook? What is that exactly? Is that a type
Oh, an
of is
overlocker.
that a type? Yeah,
So I don't know if you can see it.
I
Just
can
that
see it.
it's
Mhm.
that machine there,
Is that a
which
sewing machine?
Americans, it's a type of sewing machine. Americans call it a serger. In the UK, we call it an overlocker. And it just does, like, I don't know if you can make it out there. It does that kind of finished edge on the inside
Oh,
of
okay, I see that.
clothing.
Okay.
It just creates a professional finish on the inside. All it does is it has a razor blade built into it that cuts off the excess seam allowance and binds it in thread so that it stops it from fraying.
Okay.
Um, and it's just one of those things that I would say, if you're going to be charging anyone for the stuff you make, you need to have a professional finish on the inside. Be it if you do like a felled seam where the seam is hidden and then stitched down around so that it's not going to
Mhm.
fray, or if you overlock it.
Mhm.
I think either way, you need to make sure you're doing a professional finish.
Well, I think that's what's just gonna separate you and have people come back to you. That's as simple as that.
Exactly.
It doesn't have to be professional finish, but you also may not have anyone buy anything from you at all, anyways,
Well, for
right?
sure. Yeah,
I mean,
for
that's pretty
sure.
much how it works. So no, that's yeah. Um, sorry. So if you're and when you start with patterns. Forgive me, I
Hmm,
really don't know
that's all right.
costuming at all, so I'm very ignorant towards it. And
That's
so,
cool.
but you if you're making what's the obviously a Besman shirt would be the easiest thing to make theoretically, right? Because there's less
Yeah,
patterns
yeah.
to it. So let's with a jacket then. So how do you get your sizing? Is it a standard sizing, medium, large, small that you start with as far as the pat like the because obviously jackets are going to be bigger, right? And then
Hmm.
the measurements you go from there. And
So whenever I start patterning anything,
mhm,
usually the first one I make is for me. So
okay,
most of my patterns are sized to me.
okay,
Some of them are sized to me when I was a little bit lighter. Some of them are sized to me when I was a little bit heavier. Um, but generally speaking, I'll get someone's measurements, and I won't make a new pattern for it. I just go off the pattern I've got.
okay,
I have my rulers and I have my tape measures, and I go, right, I need their shoulder measurement. My pattern, the shoulder measurement comes out at 7 inches plus seam allowance on either side. Theirs
mhm,
needs to be 8. All I know is I just need to add an inch to that. And that's a very simplified version of the way I do it.
okay,
But the more and more you do it, the more you realize the relationship between each measurement.
mhm,
Not even something I could describe to someone. Like if someone came to me and went, show me how you do it,
mhm.
I don't know that I could teach them,
Well,
because
probably because you don't have the vocabulary for it.
I don't have the vocabulary for
You
it.
didn't
I just do.
right. You just learn by doing. So
Yeah,
it's
I've never had any formal training in pattern making, in
mhm.
sewing, in anything. I just sat down and went, right, I want a Han Solo vest, but I've got no money to buy one.
Right.
And that's
Right.
why I did what I did.
I think that's how it starts for everybody,
Yeah,
honestly.
I think a lot of people go, yeah, I really want something good, but I
Mhm.
cannot afford it. And the first thing you make is always going to be pretty crap.
Of
Like
well,
that's
yeah,
just,
but that's factual, right? I mean,
yeah,
that's
that's just the way it goes. It's all a learning curve.
mhm.
And, unless you have the presence of mind to go, I know I'm going to be really happy with what I make. In a week's time, I will hate it.
Mhm.
Unless you sort of get that into your mind and go, that is okay. You're never going to do anything. So yeah, for me, I think it all starts with just having that confidence to go, right, I need to do it.
Mhm.
And that's how you learn.
So how quickly do you ship something off with you when you finish? Like when you finish something now, because I mean, your stuff is really tailored, and I mean, you capture the essence of what you're building to a T,
Thank you.
right? So when you finish it, there's a part of you that's like, damn, like this is great. Like there's a very rewarding aspect to doing something well done,
For sure.
right? You know,
Yeah.
and it's obviously your own point of view, so it's subjective, but you've trained yourself to the quality. You're constantly improving upon yourself. So I would even, no
Mm.
matter where you are, if someone's waiting for the best thing you've ever, oh, what the best thing you can do, you're like, well, you're waiting for a long time because you're going to probably constantly improve over time, right? So when
Yeah,
you,
I mean, anyone that orders anything from me will always get the best thing I can do right now.
of
Like
course,
that, that
right.
that is that is the way it goes. I mean, even to this day, I'm changing my production methods. I recently completely threw out my Bespin shirt pattern and rebuilt it from the ground up
What didn't you
because I
like
feel
about it?
it's not that I didn't like it. I loved it, and I still think the pattern I was using was perfectly valid, and it is a valid way of doing it.
Mhm.
I've just redesigned it to look a little bit more authentic and to have a slightly cleaner construction method.
Now, what do you
Um,
see that makes it more authentic? I'm not trying to, I'm just
no,
trying
no.
to, because your attention
So
to detail and
the way,
growing
the
forward
way I
is,
used to do it was I would sew the collars on. So I would basically sew the shirt of the body of the shirt. I'd
mhm,
get that ready to go. It would be attached at the shoulder seam, open at the sides, no sleeves yet, and then I would do the collar, and
mhm,
I would seam the collar on, and then I would fold the collar back over itself and top stitch around the base to make sure it was really nice and clean on the
mhm,
inside. And that is a perfectly valid way of doing it.
mhm,
Now the way I do it is I basically sew the inside yoke and the front bib facings together. So that's almost like a little, like almost like a dicky that you could put on if you wanted
sure,
to. And then I also do the two front panels and the outside back yoke sewn together.
mhm,
And that's it. And then I make the collar, and then I seam the collar on
mhm,
with the bib side on the outside, and then I flip it all the right way around.
mhm.
And then you end up with a collar that has no top stitching around the base
Okay.
and just looks really clean and professional, which is just a really nice, elegant way of doing it.
Mhm.
And that's just the pattern I redesigned recently. Was I just went, you know what, I'd be happier if I could
Now,
do them that.
is it as well because it's like for less like easier? Not not to diminish the
I,
work, but have you learned over time that this is just more productive to do it this way, or
I,
is it
I would
actually give it a
actually,
better look?
it gives it a better look. It's
Okay.
actually probably less productive in that it takes a little bit more time.
Okay.
But the
Mm,
time it takes in addition is, insubstantial. It takes a few extra minutes, but
mm,
the look it gives is just much cleaner in my
okay.
opinion.
Mhm.
um yeah, I'm
Which
happier with it that way.
I got you. No, I mean, that's, yeah, that's, it, I get that. I mean, it's really what you're trying to duplicate is the actual prop. So how you
Yeah,
get there is
sure.
your own journey, and the fact
Oh
that,
god, yeah.
you know,
My attitude is there are so many ways to skin a cat. You can do it any number of ways,
mhm,
and at the end of the day you can achieve the same look 20 different ways, but so long as it
mhm.
looks right and you're happy with it, at the end of the day there's nothing to say that you're right or wrong.
So when you finish that, right, and
Mm.
you look at it and you're like, this is good. How is it upsetting to pack it up and send it off? Because you're like, I don't even get a chance to, okay, that's
it,
got to go.
it's
I know
not
they want it. I know there's a date that I have to get it out to, like, because
not upsetting per se. There is always an element of me where I often say it when I'm really proud of something. I go, I wish this fit me, because if it did, you wouldn't be getting it.
Oh wait, I get
Um,
it. That's the
but
silver
often,
lining for you, though, is you're not
yeah,
always building for your own size. So no
yeah.
matter what
And
it is, you hold it up, you're like, well, I can't use this anyways.
yeah, I pop it on the dress form. I give it one last look over. I take a few pictures, post it to my Instagram, share it on the Han Solo groups on Facebook, and
Sure.
go, right, I'm really proud of that. I can
Right.
pack it up and I can take a walk to the post office.
Now, have you ever built something for someone that has your size and you get it
Oh yeah,
on
loads of
and
times.
yeah, and you get it on, you're like, yeah, yeah.
It's very rare that even if I'm making something in my size, I
Mhm.
would very rarely think I'm going to try that on. Um, just because it feels a bit strange me going,
Well,
I'm
as
going
long
to
as you're
put
wearing
these on.
underwear.
Well, yeah. But usually I'll get it on the dress form. I go, that looks great. I'm really happy with that. Um, and then I might go, God, I really wish I didn't have to send it out. I really wish I didn't have to. I've done a few best bin jackets lately because I don't currently have a best bin jacket for myself.
Mm,
I sold the one I'd made for myself a while ago because
sure.
I've streamlined my production process more, and I'm
Mhm.
happy with the ones I'm doing now. So I went, I'll sell that one on, um, and I'll make myself a new one. I've just not had the time to make a new one. And so every best bin jacket I make at the minute, if it's even close to my size, I'm sitting there going, God, I wish, I wish I
Right.
could keep this one.
What would you
Um,
do? What would you do with the Besman jacket to make it an everyday wear, like you did with the A New Hope vest?
oh
What
wow,
would
that's a really great question. If I was going to do an inspired by piece for a Bespin jacket, there's all sorts of stuff you could do to it. You could give it a heavier lining to make it a warmer jacket. You could give it a zipper up the front if you want it to do up. You could give it snaps at the front. You could make it out of a denim, like a
Mhm.
heavier denim, and make it a really casual jacket like that. There's all sorts of stuff you could do to it.
Would you
I
change the
made my
pockets at all? Would you change
Yeah, you could.
those pockets are just hanging, right?
Yeah, so
Are-
well, I offer two versions of that. So there's what I refer to in my mind as the accurate version, which is fake pockets that do not function.
right.
They are folded pieces of cloth that are then stitched on, and they just hang there, like you couldn't put anything in them if you wanted to.
They kind of look, I've seen like even solo, like they almost look like a like a pregnant calf almost. They almost something like they almost kind of hang off. Like
Yeah, they
they kind
literally just hang there because they're
right,
only stitched on at the top. They just hang.
right.
Um, that is, to my mind, the accurate one. There's still debate in the community about how accurate that is. Was that all the jackets they made? Did they have that? Did they have working pockets? Yada yada yada. I offer the accurate version, which is accurate to the prop we've seen, which is fake pockets. I
Hmm.
then also offer one that has real pockets that sort of apes the look of the hanging pocket, where it it overhangs, but it is still a functioning pocket. Um,
Now, is that a distinguishable, like, for example, if I was to hold up two jackets, would you be able to tell one from the other from visually or
me
no?
personally,
Yes.
I would be able to tell. I think
Yes.
it might take me a little bit of time, but I would be able to tell it. If
Well,
I
hold on
looked
a
at it.
second.
I think I would be able to. I think most people,
Hmm.
unless they were a maker themselves,
Hmm.
they made those jackets themselves. I don't think they would be able to tell looking at it.
Right. Well,
Just what feels most authentic to you.
that's the trust that like I would have in someone like yourself, right? That's the expertise. Well, it is. I mean, you put a lot of
I would
time.
hope. I
No,
would
but
hope that I would
that's the
reward that trust.
no. Yeah, but and clearly you have, but that's what it comes down to because I have to. Do you get a lot of questions? So if you propose, say someone wants a Besman jacket, do you propose that to them? Like, how do you decipher how you're going to build the pockets?
So on my Etsy page, there's just drop down menus of real pockets, fake pockets,
Okay.
and they can choose between blue and grey because for me the thing about costuming is, I've said this lots of times before, I feel like I'm starting to sound like a broken record, but we're all after a certain experience. And
Hmm.
whether the experience you want is to feel like Harrison Ford on the set of Empire Strikes Back, or if you want to feel like Han Solo in Cloud City, if you want to feel like Harrison Ford on the set, you would
Hmm.
probably go for a grey jacket with fake pockets,
Hmm.
because that's the most authentic version you can get to that idea.
Hmm.
If you wanted to feel like Han Solo in Cloud City, you would probably get a blue jacket with working pockets, because that is what it looks like he has in the movie.
Hmm.
That makes sense.
It does. It's like the
I
Hoth
think, I
jacket,
think,
same idea.
and yeah, it's the same thing. There are
Mhm.
just two different schools of thought, and whichever one you subscribe to, or whichever way you
Now,
subscribe to for a certain thing,
mhm.
that's fine.
Now, this is a
Um,
question that you could answer then. So, where do most people fall when they receive that info? Because I would assume people come into it with a certain idea, but as you just mentioned, the cloth appears a different color on film, which not everyone's aware of, right? So,
yeah,
once that information,
Empire
it's
was Empire got a lot of post-production filtering and color tweaks and all sorts, and that makes what is a gray jacket look blue, and that's
mhm,
fine. And you can have blue or gray. I offer
mhm,
both.
mhm.
Um, a lot of people, it's hard to say, to be honest with you. I think it's probably not quite as much as 50-50. It's probably 60-40, and that 60% would want a blue one, 40% would want a gray one.
Mm. That's
And I
interesting.
think
So most
I,
people fall with the idealized version of it,
I
theoretically.
believe so. I mean,
Yeah.
that's my experience. A different maker like Adam may go, no, it's the other
Mhm.
way around for me.
Well,
But
no, I wanted your experience because it's a credible experience. Yeah, sure, everyone may have their own experience,
yeah,
obviously, but there's certain people you can't just ask anyone off the street and they'd be like, oh no, it's definitely blue, right? You know what I mean?
well,
You're like,
yeah.
well, what do you know? But clearly,
I mean,
people are purchasing it from you, so they.
and that's the thing is, you could ask someone on the street, what color is that jacket, and they would go, it's definitely blue. Because
Mhm,
if you look at the pictures of it from the movie, it does look definitely blue. But then you look at it in the prop store auctions and you look at behind the scenes photos, it's definitely gray. And
mhm,
ultimately, what people have to decide is, which experience do I want?
mhm,
For me personally, I always want the thing that actually existed.
mhm. I get that. That's the same as me. That's the
Yeah,
same as
well,
me.
yeah,
I feel the same way. Yeah.
you want all
Other.
the little imperfections and you want
Mhm,
everything that made that thing what it is. You
mhm.
don't want the idealized version from the imaginary world.
Well, if you're going to be spending a lot of money, no, to each their own, right?
Oh,
To
absolutely.
each
I
their
think
own.
both experiences are perfectly valid.
Yeah, but if you're going to be, and also it depends on your fandom, right? Like, I mean, it really depends how much you're invested into it. If it's just a
Mm,
casual thing and you ask somebody like some people have so much money in this world, they don't care. And they're like,
yeah,
listen, dude, I don't care. You make it pink if all, I just make it, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like this, whatever. I don't care. I'm
yeah,
colorblind anyways. But
yeah,
for me though, yeah, like I like the idea of duplicating actually what was used or what was
yeah.
seen as authentic. So I'm always just curious how people fall because I get that question as well. So I was just always curious how you answered it and how people end up falling on it. Which way they would
Yeah,
where that.
I would definitely say it's more people want the idealized version because so this is really interesting. The thing I always consider as well, especially for me with my own A New Hope gear, um, there is something to be said for how you remember a piece,
Mhm,
which I almost think is more valid than what it was actually like. So
mhm,
for me,
mhm.
I always make my A New Hope vests really, really short, like
Short.
just yeah, super cropped in the body because the way I remember that vest is that it was really short on Harrison Ford, and it was
Mhm.
short on Harrison Ford. There was always a little bit of a gap between his vest and his trousers,
Sure.
but I always exaggerate that in mind because that is to me that is
Mhm,
how it looks, and I think there is something to be said for the experience you want is bringing what is in your mind into existence.
mhm,
So I think ultimately for a lot of people, the way the Bespin jacket exists in their mind is blue. And some people, interestingly, see it as like a dark navy blue.
mhm,
And then some other people see it as almost like a really soft French blue. It's really interesting that even within the blue jacket camp, there's
mhm.
like a whole spectrum of blues that you could choose.
So how many different variations do you make then? Just.
So I offer grey and blue,
Mhm,
fake pockets and real.
mhm. Okay.
That said, I think my listing, if it doesn't say it, I meant to add it. I've also said, if you want fake top pockets and working bottom pockets, send me a message and I can do that.
Right.
I've also had people ask me about making stuff in all sorts of weird fabrics and colors.
Mhm.
I had someone ask me if I could make them a cream cotton A New Hope vest because they want that vest, but they want it in cream for whatever reason. I've gone, yeah, I can do it. And I gave
Right.
them a quote and they went, oh, I can't afford it. But
Right. 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 Right.
which
Right.
is,
Well, because
that happens.
Of course it does. Yeah. I know a lot of people. Now, how do you feel about, well, there's a certain, how do you feel about the people understanding what it truly takes to do what you do? Like the fact that you are by yourself, that, you're outsourcing all the material, and there's a
Yeah.
whole venture down of hours to get it to where it is, right?
And there's a lot of cost involved in producing stuff that people don't consider. Like, obviously I've had to buy my equipment at some point. The fabric costs money, the threads cost money, Etsy takes a cut, I have Etsy fees on top of that, and it all adds up to just slicing down my margins. And not that it's all about money, it's just eventually I would like to make this my full-time gig.
So how do you feel? So is it upsetting then when people try to cut the line and be like, well, just, I want to get you where you are right now, and I want all your expertise. Can you just give it to me so I can do it myself? Do you ever get people like that come at you in a way that is kind of like, I mean, information is great because you share information. That's the only way we all learn. But there's some people
my attitude generally is that information is free. If someone that is an enthusiastic member of the community and wants to make something, comes to me and goes, can I ask your advice? I will absolutely give them the time and my advice and whatever help I can. Generally, I won't give out my patterns, because my patterns are, my bread and butter. That's how I make a living. But generally speaking, I'll gladly help. I'll give advice, and I'll give opinions, and I'll talk to people about it till the cows come home, because I love what I do and I love talking about what I do. So if someone wants to, shoot the breeze and talk shop with me, I'll gladly do that.
Right.
It's a difficult one, because when someone's a new sewer and wants to do what I do, without wanting to sound egotistical, I sort of have to mentally prepare them for the fact that what they produce will not be the same as what I produce. Just because I've been doing it for nearly 3 years now, and I've literally barely had a week off sewing for 3 years. I've just been going and going and going and going. And not that I know everything there is to know, because I definitely don't, but I'm just getting to a point where I'm really proud of what I'm producing.
For sure.
So without wanting to sound egotistical, it's hard to sort of impress that upon them. I'm just like, just expect that you won't be happy with it to begin with.
Well, especially if you're going to compare it to your work where you are right now. You're 3 years ahead of whoever's starting right now.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, is like, again, without wanting to go on about Adam, he was so helpful to me when I first started. He offered me loads of advice. And, I took that from him, and that, pay it forward, and information should be free. These movies are 40 odd years old.
Yeah.
50 years old. They shouldn't, the secrets of how things are made shouldn't be secrets.
Well, if you have a real interest in sewing, or you have a real interest in anything, I don't care what it is. If you have a real interest in it, you can figure it out.
Oh, for sure.
If you want to do the legwork, it's different if you just want to get to the end right away, right?
Oh, exactly.
That's a whole different ball game. But there are some people that want to skip the line. But so what's the most difficult thing for you to make? What is the one thing when someone orders it, you're like, I got to make that again? And not being a first time build either, but it's just like that jumpsuit, for example, that can't be easy to make.
Yeah, that really isn't easy to make.
There's a lot of pockets on there. I've seen how you break it down.
There's 12 zips on a Ghostbusters flight suit, and that's a lot of work. I mean, I don't sell these. I thought for a while I might, but then I realized that a lot of Ghostbusters fans don't really mind too much if it's super accurate or not. So I was like, you know what? I'm not going to offer them. It's not worth it.
Is that because you can't sell them at a price that would be beneficial for you to actually make them? I literally
couldn't compete. I could not compete with the stuff that's available mass market, just because of the amount of time it takes me for, even charging.
But you might surprise yourself as well. But I understand where you're going with it, and I understand what you're saying. But you may surprise yourself.
I mean, I suppose. I mean, if someone came to me and went, look, I really want one, will you make it?
Right.
I'll give them a price and go, yeah, I'll gladly make it. It's just that's what it costs.
Right.
Probably one of the hardest things for me is it's not even the hardest, it's just the most finicky one, which is the Marty McFly Back to the Future jacket.
That looked like a pain in the ass.
Yeah, it can be.
There's a lot.
It's not the most complicated jacket in the world, but at the same time, it's trickier. And because because the Marty McFly jacket was just a mass-produced, off-the-rack Guess jacket.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And like you can still find vintage ones that crop up, but they're going to cost you an arm and a leg.
I was going to say that's right.
So to try and recreate something that was literally manufactured for mass consumption in the 1980s, that's tricky to try and get to that level of fidelity. Like the
you think it would be easier, only because, see, again, this is my ignorant approach to it, but only because since it was mass made, you think that there would be an easier approach to making it because it was now I've seen it, so this isn't the case, I guess, but it'd be more generic in the way it was actually built.
Yeah, I mean, I can completely understand why you would assume that. I think the thing to bear in mind is that when something is mass produced, it's never just made by one person.
Right.
There's 50 people in a factory. Each person is doing that one bit over and over and over and over again.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all streamlined to be super efficient. Like the Han Solo Bespin jacket, that was probably made by one person, and you can tell that it was handmade by someone because there are bits where the stitching is crooked, or there's like a little wobble, or there are imperfections in it where you can almost go, that's fine because that's exactly what the thing was, and that makes sense in the context of the universe. For Marty McFly, both in the universe of Back to the Future and for Michael J. Fox wearing the jacket, both of those jackets are the same mass-produced jacket.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So like the Han Solo jacket was probably made by some random guy on some random planet, and it was handmade. Fine.
Right.
But for something to be mass produced, you're trying to replicate a quality and a finish that is factory level when you're one person. And that can be tricky.
You're saying there's no room for error, really?
Yeah, there's very little room for error. I mean, sometimes you'll buy something that is mass produced and there will still be a little wobble or a missed stitch or whatever, and that's fine, you know.
Do you offer that jacket then?
The Marty McFly jacket, yeah.
You do. So that's the one you dread. You hear that if anyone's listening to this, just start loading up on those Marty jackets.
I mean, please do, because it'll make me a lot of money. But at the same time, I won't sleep for 3 weeks.
So how do you compartmentalize? Because you do work a day job as well, and then you obviously do this in the evening. So and you've been married for how long now? You are married, obviously, and
I'm married. I got married in 2016.
5 years.
Yeah, five years this year.
Yeah. Congratulations.
We got married in December, so we're still a long way off our 5th anniversary.
So that doesn't leave a lot of time for.
It doesn't leave me a whole lot of time. To be honest with you, it's very rare that I work in the evenings.
Okay.
The fact that we're doing this at what was 6 a.m. shows that I'm more of a morning guy than I am an evening guy. Mainly because I'm so used to waking up early to go to work. I often get to work for 6 a.m.
Okay.
So often what I'll do is I'll work, my 40 hours, 45 hours at my day job. And then on my days off, I'll be here at my sewing machine working through my commissions. So that's how I compartmentalize, is that without wanting to, again, play the world's smallest violin, it's very rare that I take a full day off.
Right.
But luckily for me, I love my sewing work so much that it doesn't often feel like work.
Sure.
I mean, there are times when it really does feel like work. Like when I've got a lot of stuff on, I'm going, right, I need to go bam, bam, bam. I need to do these 3 things today. That's when it feels like work.
Sure. You have a deadline for yourself.
Yeah. For the most part, I'm very lucky in that it doesn't feel like work.
Well, you're also working on stuff that you enjoy. I mean, that's
exactly. I'm passionate about the stuff I make.
It only makes sense. It's almost like it's like therapy to a certain extent, or meditation to a certain extent.
Absolutely. Like, and if I'm lucky enough that some of the stuff I'm making, I can get, like, if I can get a shirt made in a day, which won't take me a whole day, luckily. But if I get a good head of steam down, I get a shirt made. That feels like a really great day's work, even though it's not been a full day. So already I'm onto a winner because I've achieved something. It's the projects where like that takes forever, where it feels like I can be sewing for hours and hours and hours and hours, and it doesn't look that much different because everything's just still in bits.
Right. But is that fair to say, because the flight suit also is kind of a new venture? So, the more you do it, obviously the faster, better, and everything else, right?
I mean, I made my first Ghostbusters flight suit, the Ghostbusters 1 flight suit, like a year ago.
Okay.
And that took me forever to get together because it was a brand new thing that I'd never made before. And it took a long time to figure it out.
Hmm.
That one I got together in, just over a week.
Yeah.
Which is, good because I was just doing it in my spare time, just knocking it together. But yeah, you're right. The more you do something, the faster you get at it.
Mhm. Well, and how hard is it for you to stop then? Like, for example, say you can see the light at the end of the tunnel and it's, I don't know, whatever time it might be. And you're like, do you power through, or are you disciplined enough to be like, done for today, I'm going to start tomorrow.
It
Boom.
depends on how close to the light at the end of the tunnel I am. Like if I've literally got to do, like if I've got to sew up the armholes on a vest, I'm like, that's a 5-minute job. I'll get that done.
Mm-hmm.
That said, if the project has been going not poorly, but if it has been an uphill battle, I might go, you know what, enough's enough today. I'll finish it tomorrow. You don't want to tempt fate by going, that's a quick job, I'll just finish that. Mm-hmm. And then suddenly, before you know it, you've cocked it up completely, and it's going to take you way more time to undo what you've done and then go back and fix it. Luckily, it's rare.
I was going to say, do you use an alarm or anything to kind of stop you from doing your work, or is it just, I mean, how do you know, how do you stop? Like, I mean, you said you just have a specific time frame where you kind of punch in, punch out, or?
I don't have a time frame where I punch in, punch out, especially at the minute, because this workspace, my wife's desk is there. She's a teacher, so she's teaching from home a lot. So at the minute, I'm literally just ducking in here during, like, she'll have a free hour in the day where she's not teaching. So I can duck in, get an hour done, and then go away again.
Okay.
So she can carry on working. So really, at the minute, I'm just sort of like doing what I can when I can.
I got you.
In terms of when I stop, as with every project, there's always what I call a natural stopping point, which is where you've done a good chunk of stuff and you've got, I finished making all of the pockets. That's a good natural stopping point, Or, you've put the zip in a jumpsuit. That's a good natural stopping point. I try to take those opportunities where I can if I need to. Generally, it's more that my back ends up hurting, to be honest with you, because I'm sitting at a desk and I'm like peering at a sewing machine for hours on end. Sure. Usually I go, right, I need to take a break and I need to stretch my back out.
You need to have a cup of coffee.
Yeah, grab a cup of coffee and chill.
So what's the one technique you've improved the most on that from 3 years ago that was a complete disaster? Not a disaster, but like just like you didn't know what to do, to where you are now, where you're like, wow, I wish I would have known this. What would you tell yourself 3 years ago? What's the biggest advice you would give yourself as far as getting to where you are right now? I mean,
literally every part of my process has changed and improved over the 3 years, and it's still changing and improving. I think the main thing I didn't know 3 years ago that is hilarious to anyone listening that can sew is that I never really realized the value of sewing things inside out and turning them the right side round. Like that is a standard practice in sewing. Like when you're like say you're sewing a collar, you put the two pieces of the collar together, right sides together, so it's inside out, sew it up and then turn it the right way around. And then it's really nice and clean. The first stuff I was making, I didn't know that. So I was just pressing the seam allowance to the inside, putting things together and top stitching them together, which is really bad practice. And it's such an amateur move. But at that time, I hadn't thought about it. I didn't know what I was doing.
Well, don't you think everyone started the exact same way?
Well, I mean, unless they were having some formal training, I would imagine it would be an
That's what I mean, right? Now, when you fold it around, you use an iron to crisp it down?
Yeah, I mean, you've got to be pressing stuff as you go. Like,
okay?
Again, that's a great bit of advice to anyone that's sewing. Like my wife, when she first started sewing, never pressed anything. And as someone that loves clothes in general as well as costumes, it's so important to press the stuff you're making, because that gives you a clean, professional finish. Okay. Like on the outside, when you can see that a seam has been pressed before you've top stitched it. Okay. Suddenly, the difference is night and day. It's night and day. Like the difference is amazing.
One just looks professional.
Yeah, it just looks like sense of word. An extra time.
Now you've also made a Kermit the Frog Muppet.
I have made a Kermit the Frog Muppet.
How difficult was that?
That was really bloody difficult. Because as someone that doesn't really like hand stitching that much,
is that all hand stitched?
Kermit the Frog, yeah, if you want to make an authentic one, yes. So Kermit the Frog, as all Muppets, are constructed using what they call the Henson stitch, named for Jim Henson, that sort of pioneered the way of sewing, which is, it's a modified ladder stitch where rather than putting it right sides together and turning it the right way around, you actually sew it wrong sides together, but the type of stitch you do pulls the seam allowance to the inside as you're sewing. And then what you do, I may not be describing that very clearly. And
I
then
think I know what
do,
you mean, though. Yeah, it's
take
like
your
doing up
needle-
shoelaces almost.
Yeah, very similar in that you're sort of going back and forth, and that draws it to the inside. And then you take your needle and you pull out the fluff that's in the seam, and that hides the seam. So that basically you're trying to create something that looks completely seamless.
Yeah.
You couldn't do that with a machine. You just wouldn't get that same level of finish with a machine. I mean, my Kermit isn't perfect. I'm already planning on building an authentic puppet one.
It looks pretty good.
Thank you. I mean, I am still really proud of him. He's sitting up there, which is why I keep looking over there. He's not perfect, but my intention next is to make a proper authentic puppet version, because that's just like I call it like a plush sculpture, in that he just sits there.
Sure. But it looks like Kermit. I've seen it.
It looks like Kermit.
You can't lie
every
to
time
me.
I come to my server,
Now, is it ping pong balls? Is that what it is for his eyes?
His eyes are ping pong balls, which is the authentic way of doing it. You cut a ping pong ball in half and.
I got Jim Henson's biography. I haven't started reading it though. I've been
I'm thinking I should read that as well.
You know, I mean,
the man was an absolute genius.
Yeah. Him, Disney.
I'm very excited for the whole of the Muppet Show coming to Disney Plus as well. That's going to be my next couple of weeks absolutely sorted.
When is that coming out? Is that coming soon?
February, I want to say 16th. I could be wrong. 19th, something like that.
So have you considered making another puppet outside of Kermit, or is Kermit just kind of?
Not really. I mean, I only decided to make Kermit because my wife and I were watching the recent Muppet movie, and I went, "Oh, I'd really like to make a Kermit," and that was it.
You basically did it to yourself again. You're like,
yeah, I always do it to myself.
I would like to. I'm going to build that for myself.
Literally, that is how I get myself into these situations. I go, I wonder if I could. And then me being quite stubborn, I go, yeah, of course I can. And then I go, oh, crap, now I have to do it.
That's very cool, though. It's awesome. Sorry, I was just looking at, I just made some notes here. I just wanted to see.
That's all right.
How are you doing on time? Sorry, I realize this is long. So
I'm free all day long. Okay. Like literally, I've got nothing on today. So
well, let's make a 12-hour video and see how that works out.
I'm down. I'll have to go and get some more coffee, but other than that, I'm great.
Who's influenced you that you've befriended that you didn't know, like that your friendship's kind of grown? Obviously, even like obviously we're talking now, but outside of that, like, who's inspired you through social media?
I mean, tons of people. Obviously, you inspire me as a maker because your attention to detail is amazing. Adam, as I've said, has been a fantastic influence on me. Gareth, who I did the live stream with recently, he's been a great friend. We've chatted a few times, sort of via Zoom or video call. DJ Burgess, I don't know how to say his surname. He's a great guy. He does like fighter pilot helmets, X-wing pilot helmets, that kind of thing.
Okay. How does he make those? Does he make
so often I think he just buys the Black Series stuff and then strips the paint down and repaints them as like these super authentic helmets.
Okay.
They're amazing. Like his attention to detail is incredible.
That's got to be limited though, because those things generally sell out.
Yeah, I think they're because they're so mass produced, people then sell them on at not crazy prices.
Okay. Okay.
But again, I think he has also done castings and stuff as well. So he does great work. There's loads of people in the Ghostbusters community that build proton packs and all sorts of props that inspire me.
How's that Egon wand? What's his wand?
The Neutrino wand.
Yeah, is that what it's from? Theoretically, the one from the trailer, like Hasbro made it. Is that right?
Yeah. So Hasbro released a really great high fidelity replica of the Neutrino wand that is going to be seen in Ghostbusters Afterlife when that finally hits theaters.
Sure.
And it's not crazy expensive. Like,
no, it's only 100 and some bucks or something.
Yeah, it was like, it cost me 70 quid. which is
Okay.
absolutely nothing for a really good, authentic looking prop that Hasbro clearly designed it with fans in mind, because it's completely modular in that you can take stuff off and replace it with authentic parts.
Hmm.
And suddenly you've got what is the equivalent value of, you know, a £500 Neutrona one that was made by an independent maker.
Hmm.
Not
Well,
saying that you should undercut someone, but
no, but I mean, that is a
for someone
factual
like
thing. You
me,
can't, yeah, no, but
that,
you can't compete with Hasbro. But the nice
yeah,
thing about Hasbro, from what I've followed, is they seem to be hiring people that have interest in the source material. Like
exactly.
I recently was reading something on a Bisman jacket that's being made by somebody. I don't know who it was. So I looked up a review of it, and it was just so generic. It was just like such a generic. And I was looking at it, I'm like, not to sound snobbish, because I don't know a lot of it, but I do know the details, right?
Yeah.
And I'm watching this and I'm like, God damn, man, like nothing on this is, and sure, it's maybe only, I mean, it's $150, but there was nothing about it that captured the essence of Empire outside of the generic look, if that makes any sense at all.
That is the trick, isn't it? Is that there is a charm to those costumes, and unless, I would go so far as to say, is that unless you have a maker that cares about what they're doing and often is doing it themselves,
Mm-hmm.
or is overseeing it to minute detail, you're not going to get that level of like personality to it.
Mm-hmm.
Something mass produced just doesn't quite feel the same to me.
What's surprising though, when Hasbro produces something that kind of does, right? Because
Oh
that
yeah,
sounds
for
like that
sure.
one, yeah. And again, it seems to me like they've employed people that actually
Mm,
have an interest in that.
yeah, and they love the IP, they care about the detail, and they care about the fan base, and they
Yes.
want to make it as good as they can for the price that they're selling it. And so
Hmm.
for like 70 quid to get a Neutrona one with accurate lights and sounds, has got metal parts on it and has full functionality, and they've also designed it so that you can automatically integrate it into your Proton pack right out
Oh
of the box.
wow,
Yeah, they gave you an
wow,
adapter so that you can put your split loom right on there, and then suddenly you've got it on your Proton pack already.
wow.
That attention to detail for that price point is hard to beat.
Yeah. Well, it's the
Especially
same
with
thing with
someone
the
like me
black.
that
It's the
isn't a
same thing
prop
with the,
maker.
yeah, but it's the same thing with the Black Series helmets.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
You,
exactly.
you know, like I don't know that world that well, and
No,
I
me neither.
know the people that do know that world, they can tell you specifically what the difference is. And I'm not advocating one or the other. I'm just simply saying that it's you can go really wrong with that sort of stuff,
Mm,
like really wrong. So it's nice to see when people actually are going in the direction of more accurate to what they're trying to do, opposed to
yeah.
some generic knockoff or
Well,
whatever it
I
might
mean,
be.
yeah, you look at like the mass-produced tie-in stuff that they were putting out for movies and TV shows back in the day,
Hmm.
and it was inaccurate mass-produced toys because they just assumed that people didn't care.
Hmm.
Now companies are looking at fan bases like Star Wars and like, you know, Ghostbusters and all sorts of stuff and going, right, well, how do we appeal to the collector? And with
Hmm.
stuff like sideshow collectibles and high-end stuff, that's really great, but for some people they can't afford that.
Hmm.
So when there's a mass-produced option from a company like Hasbro with Black Series helmets, or the Ghostbusters stuff, they call it the Plasma Series,
Hmm.
it's great that they're trying to reach out to that side of the community without breaking the bank.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, oh, it's
It's
a good
truly,
time to be a fan, I
uh,
would say.
yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, without question, with the internet and the information, and
Oh yeah,
I mean, people can search it out because they can find likes of yourself, Adam. You know what I mean? Like, there's so
yeah.
many avenues that are not available 5, 10, 15 years ago. That's just
Oh, for
everything.
sure, yeah.
Everything
And
has
the thing
changed.
is, more and more, you know, makers of their own stuff are coming out of the woodwork now. The resources are there.
Yeah. Yeah. 3D printing's changed everything too.
Oh
I
my
mean,
God, 3D printing has
it's changed.
revolutionized
Yeah. It's
the
changed
fan of
everything.
stuff. Oh,
Hmm. Without
completely.
question. Um, so I never did ask originally. I wanted to ask you, how old were you when you first saw Star Wars then?
So my earliest memory of Star Wars is I was probably about 5 or 6 years old, and I was sitting on my dad's couch at his house, like curled up against him, age 5, and Empire was on, and it
Mhm.
was the bit that sticks out in my mind is Cloud City, just because it looked so like out there. It was like a Sunday afternoon in the summer, as I recall, and I just remember that movie. While I didn't get instantly like obsessed with it, I remember it just left an impression on me of being like, wow, that was really cool. And then it wasn't really until the prequels started coming out that I then started seeing more Star Wars around.
Okay.
Not that I was ever a big fan of the prequels.
Sure.
I had a friend at school, just anecdotally, I had a friend at school who was obsessed with Star Wars. Once the prequels came out, like he was just obsessed with it. And during our breaks at school, he would want to play Star Wars. And so he'd be like, I get to be Luke Skywalker, you have to be Han Solo. And I was like, oh, I was like, fine. Like, who doesn't want to be Han Solo?
That's not punishment.
I was like, oh no, great. Ooh.
Right. So did you watch Raiders and all those kind of films right around that same time too? And
yeah, I saw Raiders, I think, when I was a little bit older. I think I must have been, sort of 10-ish when I first saw Raiders, and I was like, wow.
Television,
I think for
right?
me, all on TV.
On TV,
yeah. I wasn't born until '92, so I didn't see any of the theatrical.
But they were re-released, but you still would have been too young.
I was still too young, and also my dad, while he is a huge movie fan, he's not like obsessive about any particular movie like I am.
Sure.
So even if Raiders had been re-released, I don't think it would have occurred to him to go to the movies and see Raiders on the big screen.
It's like my family as well.
Yeah.
They,
I mean, from a young age, he really instilled in me a passion for music and film and art and theatre. And so, a lot of my cultural upbringing was because of him. But for some reason, I've just always been an obsessive about stuff. Like when I love something, I love it like wholeheartedly. I can't just watch something and go, oh, that was good, and then never think about it again.
Right.
Yeah, so when I saw Raiders, I think Raiders made a bigger impression on me at the time than Star Wars did. When I was at university, I saved up really hard and I bought a Raiders jacket from West End Leather, which I still have and I love.
That's in the UK, right?
Yeah, they're based in the UK, and at the time, this is 10 years ago now. They were like £135, which at the time for me was a lot of money. Now it's not quite so much money, but they're slightly more expensive. But the value is great. So yeah, Raiders left a real impact on me. And then, seeing stuff like Back to the Future. I remember being really young watching Back to the Future and being like, wow, what a great movie. Same with Ghostbusters. I was quite young when I saw Ghostbusters and it scared the shit out of me. Because I think I was only like, I don't know, 7 or something when I saw Ghostbusters, and that was quite terrifying.
I remember I was in, I'll date myself, but I was in public school when Ghostbusters came out. And I can remember that film came out along with Gremlins came out. I had to look this up. I had to look this up because my memory was, and it's accurate. My memory was that it came out the exact same weekend because I can remember
the same weekend, wasn't it?
It was the same weekend. I had to look that up to double check it because that can't be right. Because I can remember being on the playground and everyone's talking about these two movies that are coming out, Gremlins or Ghostbusters. What are we going to see? What are you going to see? What are you going to see? Well, I loved Saturday Night Live as a kid, and so I obviously loved Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd. Dan Aykroyd was like an hour away from me where I grew up. Where he was, right where he's from, right? You know what I mean? So, but I felt like I was like, I ended up going seeing Gremlins first because I wanted to be scared because you said Ghostbusters scared you, right? Yeah. And I was like, Ghostbusters can't be that scary, not with Dan Aykroyd and Bill Murray. That can't be that scary, right? Which was great. So that was probably a great back-to-back weekend for me. In fact, I think I saw Gremlins Friday night because I think movies were like less than $5 at the time. They may have been crazy. I know. It sounds like my grandfather speaking right now, but they're inexpensive. and we went to see Gremlins Friday night, and then we saw Ghostbusters Saturday night, and those were like two of the best back-to-back films. It was amazing.
What an amazing weekend.
Yeah, truly enough. Yeah. Friday, Saturday night, Ghostbusters and Gremlins. It was amazing. It was
the only remotely similar experience I ever had about a great sort of double bill like that is my wife and I went to a local outdoor film festival before we were married, so we're talking 6-7 years ago. It was outdoors in the summer. They had this enormous screen. You rented a deck chair and you sat there with a picnic and some beers and stuff. And we watched Back to the Future, followed immediately by Ghostbusters, and it was like, what a double bill to get
Oh
to see,
wow.
like, in the warm
Wow.
summer air, like on your fourth beer. It was like, oh, amazing.
I saw Clockwork Orange and Blade Runner back to
Oh,
back. And the first time I saw those in the big screen, and uh, my major impression was Clockwork Orange. I was like, this thing's intense. And
yeah.
then Blade Runner, I was like, I didn't remember how slow it moved. How
It can
slow
be
that.
glacial, can't it?
Yes.
It's just very like, it's a patient movie.
So how do you feel about the sequel to that film?
2049. I've only seen it twice, I think. I liked it. I
Hmm.
didn't, I wasn't in love with it. I
Hmm.
liked it. I liked what the production design did with that universe.
Hmm.
I love I love the costume design. Like, I think
Hmm.
Ryan Gosling as Kay looks fantastic. That's a great jacket. It's a great gun. He looks the part. I just, it didn't set my world on fire. I just thought, I thought it was good.
Yeah.
That, I mean, and that's about all I could say about it. Always nice
Right.
seeing Harrison Ford back.
Right. Right. Very true. Well, you're going to see him again. Are you excited for the new Indiana Jones film?
I'm tentatively excited about the new Indiana Jones film because
I'm very excited for it.
because Crystal Skull obviously gets a lot of hate.
Hmm.
I don't think it's terrible.
Hmm.
It's just nowhere near as good as the first three movies.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, I
so
don't
some of
think
the
any of the films are as good as the first film.
no, oh no, that's very true. That is
Yeah.
very true.
I
I mean,
anyways.
Raiders is a masterpiece of cinema and of storytelling.
Hmm.
Again, like Back to the Future, it's just a well-oiled machine of a story. It works so flawlessly.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I am excited. I'm really excited. I'll be interested to see what they do with it, because obviously there's been talks of, are they going to cast a younger guy to play Indy, and are they going to have Harrison Ford sort of like bookending the story, or is he going to be doing the whole thing, or what? So I'll be interested to see what happens.
I think we're going to get Ford the whole time.
I would be shocked if we didn't, because he's
Yep.
still spry. He's not
Dude, I
like,
mean, I saw him in that film, Call the Wild.
mm,
He's like 90 years old and he looks like he's 20,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
He is a force of nature.
Right?
It's the
Uh,
grumpiness that keeps him young.
I want to know how they're going to deal with this aspect, and I hope they do address it somewhat. He's going to be 80 years old, and he's going to be wearing the exact same costume, which is iconic,
Mm,
right? And he has to wear it. But how is he? How are they going to make it legitimate that he's going to be wearing the exact same costume as an 80-year-old man? That probably isn't going to
mm.
be any dust or like. I hope they do. Like, there's going to be a lot of time in between. What person do you know wears the same outfit that many times later?
So my head canon
Hmm.
of it is that it's not the same shirt and jacket and trousers and hat, because obviously we see them get destroyed many
Sure.
times. Um, my idea is just that he's got like a local, like a tailor that makes him stuff,
Well, he's
and so
like
he just
Steve.
goes in and goes, hi Bill, I need another jacket,
He's
and
like
yeah, he just
Steve Jobs or whatever, where he just wears
yeah,
one
he
t-shirt and
just
one pair
opens
of
his
jeans.
wardrobe, there's
Like
like
it's
50 of the same
insane.
thing. Like a cartoon character.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I hope they do. I have a lot of faith in James Mangold. I think he does really good
Yeah,
stuff. So I'm
yeah,
really
yeah, I
interested to see
agree.
his take on it.
Well, either way, I'm excited. Like, even the thing about Indiana Jones is that, it's like brownies. Even if it's not that good, it's still good.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I know what you're saying. Same thing with Star Wars, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Same
I
thing
mean,
with
there's a
Star
lot of
Wars.
hate out there for the sequel trilogy, but I quite enjoy them. I think, for a Star
Hmm.
Wars trilogy, they're pretty fun. And that's
Yeah.
the thing, is I'm not expecting Citizen Kane from these things. I just want to be entertained.
Yeah, and the problem I think as well is you can't duplicate what's already been done.
Of
Yet that's
course.
exactly what the people, and I'm critical as well, but that's
Mm.
exactly what we want, right? We want what's already been done. We don't want anything new, but that's also exactly what we want. We want
That was the
something
biggest
brand.
problem with the Force Awakens, wasn't it?
Hmm.
Was that, people went, oh, it's too much like A New Hope.
Hmm.
And for The Last Jedi, they did something completely different. They went, it's not enough like Empire.
Hmm.
And it's like, it's a difficult balance to strike, and like, you're never going to please 100% of the people 100% of the time, because you just cannot do it.
Yeah, yeah. I feel for anyone that takes upon a Star Wars film right now because they're just the fan base is so strong and so opinionated, and there's so much ownership.
So vocal, so vocal.
Strong.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, which is, it's a shame because it's like Solo got a lot of hate because people were like, no one was asking for this,
Hmm.
and I'm like, well, I was sort of asking for it because I'll watch anything that's about Han Solo. Like, I'll
Sure.
gladly, I'd watch the Han Solo cooking hour if I could. I'd do whatever.
Now,
So I
wearing your critical hat, what would you have changed about Solo, if anything?
if if it were up to me and if money were no object, I would have spent the first movie of what would be 2 or 3
Hmm.
exploring Corellia and that life there. Because for me, that's the part of the movie that grabs my imagination the most.
Mm, same.
Seeing Han Solo as a scrappy, down on his luck orphan on
Hmm.
Corellia is a really fascinating idea of seeing where he develops as a character. So that's what I would have done, is I would have spent more time doing that.
Hmm.
And then the second movie would have been, the train heist in Kessel and that. And then
Sure.
a third movie would be leading right into A New Hope, which is essentially the Han Solo trilogy of books by A.C. Crispin.
Is it? Have you read that? Is it
Yeah,
good?
I've read it about 3 times.
Would you recommend it? Obviously.
I highly recommend it. I mean, pulpy and fun and light reading, but really entertaining.
Mm.
And you can see where they got a lot of inspiration for Solo from those books. But it just goes more in depth, and there's a few different adventures sort of throughout the trilogy. And you can really see in those books where young Han Solo becomes the Han Solo we know and love in A New Hope.
Right.
It's very well written.
All right. They talk about how he meets Chewie and all that stuff as well,
Yeah.
or is
Oh
it
yeah. It talks all about how he meets Chewie, and
is Lando
there's
in it
a
too?
hey.
Lando, is he in it? In the
Yeah,
books?
Lando's in it. You get the whole thing about how he says, you got a lot of nerve coming back here after what you pulled. You get that whole arc in
Right.
there, which then is meant to be right. That's it. They don't see each other now again until Empire, or at least that's how it reads.
Okay.
And it's good. It's really entertaining. It's very well written.
Now
AC
those
Crispin.
books are not canon, right?
No,
Anymore.
they're now part of
Canon,
Legends.
right?
Yeah,
Okay.
because obviously Solo has gone back and done a very similar thing.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I'd recommend reading them.
Yeah, well, yeah. I do. It's funny. I haven't read any. My fascination really is with the original trilogy in Star Wars and the
That's
films. I
great.
haven't ventured too much into any of the book materials outside of like costumes and so on and so forth, which is
Yeah, I mean,
not what
to
we're
be
talking
fair,
about. But
the Han Solo trilogy is really the only sort of like books I have read.
okay.
I mean, some people obviously read absolutely everything that comes out because they just love that universe so much, and that's great. But
Mhm.
unfortunately for me, I talk about this pretty regularly. The least interesting part of the Star Wars universe
Mhm.
is the stuff they focus on most of all, which is Sith and Jedi.
Mhm.
And like for me, that binary, like
Yeah.
you're a baddie and you have a red lightsaber, and I'm a goodie and I have a blue
Uh-huh.
lightsaber, and they hit each other. Like that's the least interesting part for me.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like the biggest mistake they made was making the Jedi basically Supermen.
Hmm.
Like these indestructible people that have because I mean, there's Obi-Wan Kenobi in the first film, well, A New Hope, and then in Empire you have Luke pulling out a blaster before he ever pulls out his lightsaber, right? Now
Mhm.
you can make the argument he's not a fully trained Jedi yet, or didn't have the special effects to do it, right? But like the way, which is an amazing scene, but it's totally fan service. It is fan service, but it's an amazing scene when Luke basically takes everyone down in the Mandalorian,
Hmm.
and that's what we all wanted to see to a certain extent. But at the same time, these Jedi's are so indestructible. It's like, to me,
Yeah.
the biggest problem with Superman is he's indestructible. So
Yeah,
what
he's
do you?
boring because there's nothing he can't do and he's never in real danger.
Yeah, like a Jedi's have all these. Yeah, so unless they're facing
Yeah.
a Sith, which is the opposite of a Jedi, but I get you with that.
Yeah.
And that really happened for me in Return of the Jedi and moving forward. So that's another
Yeah.
reason why the first two films have such a grounded and realistic feel to it, because it doesn't have that Superman. The Jedi
Yeah.
hasn't been born yet, right?
Yeah.
to what
Yeah,
it
and that's
becomes.
the thing. Even with superhero stories in general, that's why for me the most interesting part is how they become those characters, like how Iron Man, how Tony Stark becomes Iron Man, how Peter Parker becomes Spider-Man. Like, that's a more interesting story
Hmm.
than watching him blow a load of stuff up.
Hmm.
You know, like I always find those parts of the movies the most interesting.
The human
But
aspect to it.
yeah, the
I got
human
you.
element that makes you go, right, I understand this person before they put on that suit that makes them Batman, you know?
Right. Right. No, yeah, I agree with you for sure. Um, well, I don't want to keep you too much longer. Honestly, I appreciate your time. Is there, let me ask, so people can obviously find Instagram,
Yep.
right? And on what is it on Etsy? What is your store's name on Etsy? Is it the same as well?
It's Red Cup Apparel
Okay.
on Etsy as well. Generally, I discovered last night actually, if you just Google Red Cup Apparel Etsy, it's the first result, which is great. So if you Google that, that'll come up.
Hopefully it's
If
the
you
only
type in Red Cup
result.
Apparel, huh?
I said, hopefully it's the only result.
Well, I think there's a load of like random selections of
Right.
words that rock up, but yeah,
Oh, okay,
luckily
I
it's the
got
first
you.
result.
Okay. And then RPF, I know you said you're not very active on
I'm
that,
super
right?
inactive on the RPF.
And
Um, the Rebel
mhm,
Legion pages, I'm Red Cup cosplay on the Rebel Legion pages. I've got a few build threads on there, but nothing major. I think I've
okay,
got a big one about A New Hope and a big one about Corellia.
okay.
But again, I'm not super active on forums. I mean, if people want to see my work, the best place to look at it is Instagram.
Yeah,
There's loads of highlights.
even over
Hey,
Facebook.
even over Facebook, yeah. I mean, just because I don't tend to post too much of my work on Facebook aside from like the Han Solo groups, but I post everything on my Instagram. Like there's a whole load of highlights on there all about me making stuff.
Right, I've seen that.
So
It's great.
yeah, you can see a lot of like Bespin jackets and shirts and Ghostbusters flight suits and Martin McFly. And there's loads of stuff on there. So
Hmm.
if you're at all interested in clicking through there,
Hmm.
there are
I think
highlights.
I think everyone definitely should because you break it down really well. I mean, it's a great a way to see you go through your process because you really share everything on that aspect. You can kind of
Yeah,
see
I mean,
your
I
whole
sometimes
step.
wonder if I share too much, if it's at all interesting to anyone. But
Oh, I think everyone's interested. I mean, I don't
well,
know
I
how,
hope so.
you can kind of see people how they tailor off when they go through things, but there's always someone that gets to the end, always,
Yeah, well,
it's
exactly. If one person gets to the end of my highlights, that's great.
wonderful. So, Chris, I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me.
I mean, thank you for inviting me,
You
John. It's
know,
been an absolute blast.
yeah, very cool, man. I hope it wasn't too random. And
No, I had a fantastic time. It's great.
okay,
We'll
cool,
have to do it
man.
again.
I hope we do.